Chapter 180. 25 million supreme-grade spirit stones? Xian was dumbfounded. After all, he had only obtained a little over 2 million supreme-grade spirit stones after obtaining the treasuries of the Chu and Yu states. 25 million supreme-grade spirit stones? He wouldn't get anything even if he sold himself. As if he knew what Xian was thinking, the fifth-floor master shook his head with a smile. Young friend, you might not know this, but truth-grade spirit weapons are extremely precious even in the divine central continent, let alone in our Azure province. Especially something used by a swordsman. It's even more precious. Xian spread his hands and said helplessly, Senior, I don't have that much money. The fifth-floor master said with a smile, I know. Then why did you bring it? Xian was speechless. Wasn't this making him jealous? The fifth-floor master smiled without saying anything. Xian wasn't stupid. He immediately asked, Is there any way? The fifth-floor master nodded and said with a smile, Young friend, if you can't pay the 25 million supreme-grade spirit stones in one go, you can pay in installments. Installments? Xian was stunned. You can do that? The fifth-floor master said with a smile, Others naturally can't, but you can. Of course, it depends on whether you need it or not. If you do, you have to pay at least 25 supreme-grade spirit stones to the drunken immortal in every month. Within 3 years you have to pay everything back. This is the limit that the drunken immortal can do. 3 years. Xian thought about it and then nodded. All right. The fifth-floor master placed the sword case in front of Xian. This sword case is called Hidden Edge. With this sword case, your sword manipulation technique's power and speed can be increased by at least 30%. With your current strength, if you increase it by another 30%, no one under the 10,000 Dharma realm, except for those top-notch geniuses of the divine central continent, will be able to withstand a single strike from you. Below the Dharma realm, Xian took the sword sheath. It was cold to the touch and there were some dark golden patterns around the sword sheath. Xian put his right hand together and gently gestured with his fingers. The 5 bright grade swords in the box at the side suddenly flew up and then one by one they flew into the sword case. After a moment of silence, Xian suddenly pointed towards the door in the distance. Whoosh! 500 zhang away from the door, 5 swords were neatly stabbed into a large tree. Xian's expression changed. Compared to before, this speed was indeed at least 30% faster. Now, if he were to fight against someone below the Dharma realm, unless it was a top genius, he could kill his opponent before they could even react. Xian gently stroked the sword case in his hand. This thing was indeed a good thing. However, it was too expensive. Now he was in debt of more than 20 million best-grade spirit stones. The fifth building master did not stay for long. After receiving 250,000 best-grade spirit stones from Xian, he left. After the fifth building master left, Xian carried the sword case and came to a bamboo forest at the back of the mountain. Standing in the middle of the bamboo forest, Xian calmed his heart. Around him there was only silence. After an unknown period of time, a gust of wind appeared in the forest. As the wind passed through the bamboo forest, countless bamboo leaves slowly fell from the sky. At this time Xian suddenly put his fingers together and gently flicked. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In an instant, 7 sword lights crisscrossed in the bamboo forest like butterflies. After a breath's time, the 7 swords suddenly returned to the front of Xian. At this moment, each of these 7 swords pierced through a stack of bamboo leaves. In the air, only a bamboo leaf was left falling slowly. Xian turned and left. In the bamboo forest, when the bamboo leaf was about to fall, a sword suddenly pierced through the bamboo leaf. In a flash, the sword disappeared. In the following period of time, in addition to frantically cultivating every day, Xian also helped with the construction of Blue Waves Academy. The current Blue Waves Academy was undoubtedly the largest force in Jiang country. In terms of financial resources, it was also extremely rich. It had already far exceeded the annual tax revenue of Jiang country's imperial family. It could be said that the current Blue Waves Academy was developing at a terrifying speed. Just as Blue Waves Academy was developing rapidly, a major event suddenly occurred in the Azure province. In a desolate wasteland in the extreme south of the Azure province, one day, a wisp of sword light suddenly shot up from the ground and into the sky. In an instant, the entire sky within a few hundred li collapsed. But the wisp of sword light did not dissipate and remained in the sky. At this moment the entire Azure province was shocked. Soon the entire Azure province was spreading the news that a heaven-grade spiritual tool had appeared in the extreme south of the Azure province. Moreover, this spiritual tool was a sword. A heaven-grade sword. Above the true rank was the heavens. A true rank spiritual tool was already extremely rare in the Azure province, so not to mention Azure province, a heaven-grade spiritual tool was extremely rare even in the central divine prefecture. For a time the entire Azure province was seething with excitement. Countless people headed to the extreme south of the Azure province, and it was even to the extent that people from Azure Wave province and the central divine prefecture had rushed over. Who wouldn't be tempted by a heaven-grade spiritual tool? All of them were gathered in Azure Wave Palace. Xian took a sip of tea and said, "What do all of you think about that sword in the extreme south of the Azure province?" Mo Yunqi shook his head. "There's something fishy about it." Xian asked, "What is it?" Mo Yunqi said, "I don't know." Xian shook his head. "I don't know." Mo Yunqi was speechless. Lu Jioga spoke abruptly. "It's nothing more than a scheme of Kuraki Academy and the other two forces." All of them gazed at Lu Jioga. Lu Jioga chuckled. "It's utterly impossible for a heaven-grade spiritual tool to appear in the Azure province. Even if it did, it wouldn't appear in such a manner. It's like they're afraid that everyone in the world doesn't know about Daoist. So, I infer that someone did this on purpose." All of them looked at Xian. There was no doubt that this was targeted at Xian. Xian smiled. "They want to lure me over by myself?" Lu Jioga nodded. "That should be the case. This is probably a trap that they've set up for you." Xian was slightly puzzled. "Why are they so sure that I'll go there?" Lu Jioga smiled. "If I'm not wrong, then that sword is probably real. They're betting that you won't be able to resist its temptation." Xian smiled. Then they might have made the wrong bet. He was really tempted by a heaven-grade sword, but he wasn't stupid enough to go there despite knowing that it was a trap. Lu Jioga suddenly asked, "Why not?" Everyone looked at Lu Jioga. Lu Jioga smiled. "This is a trap, but it's also an opportunity. Moreover, if you don't accept their attack, they'll definitely make their next move. Now that you have a big family, there are too many people around you that you need to take care of. So you can't hide." On the side, Jian Chuchu nodded in agreement. "Miss Lu is right. If you don't accept their attack this time, they'll definitely make their next move. Right now there's already a death grudge between you and them. They won't give up so easily." Jiang Jiu frowned. They already know Xian's strength. So the trap they've set up over there won't be simple. If he goes there rashly. Lu Jioga smiled. "What's there to be afraid of?" Everyone looked at Lu Jioga again. Although she wasn't old, she was always so calm and composed. Lu Jioga picked up the teacup in front of her and took a sip. Then she smiled. "They've set up a trap. Why can't we reverse it?" Jiang Jiu asked. "How do you reverse it?" Lu Jioga put down the teacup and looked at Xian. "After Li Mu's death last time, they definitely won't dare to send people in the Dharma realm or the Dharma defending realm to deal with you. This time, the Heaven Sword appeared in the southernmost part of Green Province. If they lure you there can only be three possibilities. First, they want to kill you with a borrowed knife. For example, they want to borrow the genius of the divine central continent to kill you. Second, they want to set up a tactical deployment or boundary there to suppress you and greatly reduce your strength. Or they want to make you unable to exert your strength. What about the third possibility?" Jiang Jiu asked quickly. Lu Jioga said softly, "They want to kill you with the help of that sword." Xian frowned. "Kill me with the help of that sword? Can that sword kill me?" Jian Chuchu suddenly said, "Yes." Xian turned to face Jian Chuchu. Jian Chuchu said softly, "The heaven-grade sword has seized the fortune of heaven and earth. It has spiritual intelligence, which is the so-called sword spirit. If it pretends to recognize you as its master and then attacks you at a critical moment, you will definitely die." Heaven-grade sword. Xian's expression darkened. Up until now, the elegant spirit sword in his body was unable to devour a heaven-grade sword. In other words, if a heaven-grade sword were to backfire, he would have no way of resisting it. However, there was no need for him to devour it. If he could obtain it, he could directly suppress it. A truth-grade sword was worth several billion. What about a heaven-grade sword? That was definitely an astronomical figure. He would be lying if he said he was not tempted. However, he also knew that since the other party dared to take out such a precious sword to set up a trap, this trap would definitely not be ordinary. At this moment, Lu Jioge said, "Although it is dangerous, it is also an opportunity. If you go first, you may obtain a heaven-grade sword. Second, you can buy some time for Blue Waves Academy so that its students and Dao soldiers can have more time to train." At this point, she looked at Zhou Xian. "You have 12 metal men. Even if the Dharma realm attacks with your current strength and the addition of these 12 metal men, you will be able to resist for some time. If the Dharma realm doesn't act, even the top 10 geniuses of the divine central continent will find it difficult to kill you." Jiang Jiu shook his head. "It is still dangerous." Lu Jioge was about to speak when Zhou Xian suddenly said with a smile, "Miss Lu, I have a question." Lu Jioge looked at Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian said with a smile, "Why should I be led by the nose by them?" Lu Jioge looked at Zhou Xian waiting for him to continue. Zhou Xian smiled but did not speak. After a moment, Lu Jioge suddenly shook his head with a smile. "I miscalculated. Indeed, we can do the opposite." "What are you talking about?" Mo Yunqi suddenly asked. Lu Jioge smiled. "Read more books." Mo Yunqi's face darkened. Was he saying he was stupid? At the side, Bai Zai patted Mo Yunqi's shoulder. "You are stupid and do not know yourself. Look at me, although I do not understand, I do not ask. If I do not ask, they will not know that I am stupid." Everyone, seeing their expressions, Bai Zai was stunned. "Did I say something wrong?" Everyone shook their heads. Mo Yunqi patted Bai Zai's shoulder with a pitiful expression. "Bai Zai." After the sky turned dark, Zhou Xian suddenly left Blue Waves Academy. And the moment Zhou Xian left Blue Waves Academy, clouds moved in all directions. Great Cloud Realm, Kuraki Academy. Mu Qingxian stood in front of Haoran Palace. He had been staring at the leaf sword above the horizontal board for a long time. After an unknown amount of time, a black-robed man suddenly appeared behind him. "Dean Zhou Xian has already left Blue Waves Academy. Looking at the direction he is going, it should be the southernmost region of Qingzhou. However, for some reason after he went to the southernmost region he suddenly disappeared. Our people have lost track of him." Mu Qingxian slowly closed his eyes. After a moment he said softly, "This person is already the sword master. It is not strange for you to lose track of him. However, it does not matter. He will definitely arrive. He cannot refuse a heaven-rank sword. Inform Great Cloud Empire and Dark World that we can start." Zhou Xian went to the southernmost region. No one knew who spread this news, but it spread throughout the entire Qingzhou in an instant. Everyone knew that Zhou Xian was definitely going for that heaven-rank sword. For a moment, everyone in Qingzhou was discussing whether that sword would fall into the hands of Zhou Xian. However, just when everyone thought that Zhou Xian went to the southernmost region, a black-robed man carrying a sword case quietly entered Great Cloud Realm. God knows, ghost knows. P.S. I discovered that there are not many updates recently, but no one scolded me. Other than love, I can't think of any other reason. It is undeniable that you all love me, covet me, want to possess me. Chapter 181. Great Cloud Empire. Great Cloud Empire occupied almost 1/3 of Qing Province's land area. It was a well-deserved super overlord in Qing Province. At its peak, its imperial power was above all the forces in Qing Province. Even Kuraki Academy and Dark World had to bow down to it. However, there was an old saying that went, "Prosperity leads to decline." After reaching the pinnacle of its power, this once supreme overlord of the Green Province began to decline. After a few muddle-headed emperors wantonly squandered and tossed about, this once supreme overlord was once faced with a split. Just when Great Cloud Empire was on the verge of falling apart, a king appeared in the empire. Lian Wanli. It was this King Yishan who turned the tide and saved the ancient empire that was about to fall apart. Although Great Cloud Empire wasn't at its peak, no one in Qing Province dared to belittle it. Great Cloud Empire's imperial palace, Supreme Harmony Hall. There were only 2 people in the hall. An 11 or 12-year-old boy in a dragon robe and crown was sitting on the dragon throne. The little boy sat upright with a solemn expression. Below him stood a woman. She wore a black, tight-fitting dress with a vivid and lifelike rainbow phoenix embroidered on it. The rainbow phoenix's wings were spread open and its head was raised up high. Its eyes were cold and indifferent, making it look very noble. The little boy looked at the woman. Sister. Speaking of this, he seemed to have thought of something and hastily changed his words. Lianqing Jiang country is far away from our Great Cloud Empire and has no conflict of interest with it. Why should our Great Cloud Empire be its enemy? It's not in the interest of Great Cloud Empire. The woman walked to the little boy and pointed to the map. Who do you think is the biggest threat to Great Cloud Empire in Qing province? The little boy pondered for a moment and said, Jiang State. The woman shook her head. Oh. The little boy looked at the woman. Then who is it? The woman chuckled. Kuraki Academy, Dark World, and the ancient families in the country. The little boy frowned slightly. Then why do you want to attack Jiang State? The woman looked at the little boy without speaking. The little boy pondered for a long time. In the end, he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly raised his head to look at the woman. You want to use the state of Jiang? No, you want to use the Yixian to weaken them. Hearing this, a hint of relief appeared in the woman's eyes. But our Great Cloud Empire has already lost hundreds of Black Flame cavalrymen, the little boy said in a deep voice. The girl sat beside the little boy who hurriedly made way for her. The girl held his hand and said, the Black Flame cavalrymen are no longer loyal to the imperial family. They have been infiltrated by Kuraki Academy, the Dark World, and various aristocratic families. Their true loyalty isn't to the imperial family of Great Cloud Nation. Therefore, the imperial family of Great Cloud Nation doesn't suffer any loss. On the contrary, we can also remove an unstable factor. The little boy tilted his head and looked at the woman. But if this goes on, Great Cloud Empire will suffer heavy losses. The woman shook her head. These clans, sects, and powers, including Kuraki Academy, seem to be protecting Great Cloud Empire, but they're actually encroaching on Great Cloud Empire. Not only have they infiltrated the imperial court, the army, and even the imperial clan. If this goes on, Great Cloud Empire will be devoured by them in less than 10 years. As she spoke, she stretched out her left hand. These forces are like malignant tumors growing on our hands, and they're already connected to our flesh and blood. If we cut them off, we'll naturally feel pain. But if we don't, it won't just be pain but death. The little boy fell silent for a long time. In the end, he picked up a memorial to the throne in front of him. There were 2 large words on the memorial, Yixian. The little boy flipped open the memorial to the throne. It was full of records about Yixian from the Azure City until now. There were a lot of detailed records about him. After a short while, the little boy sighed softly. Yixian is actually willing to live and die with Jiang country. Alas, how great would it be if Jiang country had such an outstanding talent? As he spoke, he turned to look at the woman beside him. Big sister, what do you think of him? The woman glanced at the memorial and smiled. What do you think? The little boy thought for a moment and said, I want to listen to you. The woman didn't speak. She just took the little boy's hand and walked out of the hall. She looked at the distant sky and smiled. If he's a friend, he's trustworthy and worthy of being entrusted. If he's an enemy, he should be killed at all costs. The little boy looked up at the woman. Big sister, do you want to be an enemy or a friend? The woman rubbed the little boy's head gently. You're the emperor of Great Cloud Empire. You decide. The little boy thought for a moment and said, I want to be friends with him. The woman smiled. Why? The little boy spoke in a deep voice. My Great Cloud Empire has no enmity with him, nor do we have any conflict of interest with him. It's not in the interest of my Great Cloud Empire to be enemies with him, but it's in the interest of my Great Cloud Empire to have a trustworthy friend with him. The woman looked at the little boy with a trace of gratification in her eyes. She turned to look at the little boy. Pass down my order. Summon all the major families to the extreme south to besiege and kill Yixian. Yes. Someone answered in the dark. Big sister? The little boy looked at the woman in astonishment. The woman smiled. We're helping him. With that, she looked up at the distant sky and gently stroked her hair behind her ears. Some people are going to be unlucky. Night fell. Countless people suddenly left the imperial capital of Great Cloud Empire. They were all heading to the same place, the extreme south. And their target was Yixian. Kuraki Academy, Dark World, and Great Cloud Empire took the lead. These families naturally didn't dare to refuse. If they dared to refuse, then they really didn't want to stay in Great Cloud Empire anymore. It should be known that these three forces could be said to be the strongest in the entire Azure province. In the extreme south, a wisp of sword light was still suspended in the air and didn't dissipate for a long time. Somewhere in the dark, Xian and the Lord of the Dark World stood side by side. Their gazes fell below the wisp of sword light. Beside Xian, the Lord of the Dark World suddenly said, "Are you confident this time?" Xian said faintly, "The spirit sealing formation underground can restrict his profound qi, making him unable to use the sword. Although his physical body is strong enough, without the sword his strength will be reduced by at least 50%. At that time it won't be difficult to kill him. Of course, even if we fail, it's fine. That sword will give him a big surprise." With that, he looked at the Lord of the Dark World. "Where is he now?" The Lord of the Dark World said, "My people have already found his traces. He's not far from here and will arrive soon." Xian nodded. He clenched his fists and a trace of darkness flashed in his eyes. "Let the people underground prepare. Once he enters the surface, activate the formation immediately. Don't give him any chance." The Lord of the Dark World suddenly said, "I don't understand. Why is Lian Wanli supporting us this time? You should know that Great Cloud Empire and Xian don't have any grudges. Could it be that he really wants to unify Azure Province?" Xian sneered. "This person is extremely ambitious. It's normal for him to have such thoughts." The Lord of the Dark World nodded slightly. "If he wants to unify Azure Province without the support of Kuraki Academy, it will be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Kuraki Academy was spread throughout the various countries of Azure Province. If Great Cloud Empire had the support of Kuraki Academy, unifying Azure Province would be much easier. It should be known that Kuraki Academy's influence in these countries was extremely great." Underground. At that moment, there were already more than 100 people gathered underground. Among these people, the weakest was in the Nether Passage realm. Elites. They were all elites of Kuraki Academy and Dark World. Among them, there were more than 20 people who came from the Divine Central Continent and were all at the peak of the Divine Unity realm. Of course, this time, their true trump card was the formation underground. Forcefully suppress them. As long as Xian went underground and the formation was activated, Xian would be suppressed instantly. He would not be able to use his celestial qi. Not only would he not be able to use his celestial qi, but he would also not be able to use any secret techniques or magic powers. At that time, if they attacked together, Xian would definitely die. In order to set up this formation, Kuraki Academy and Dark World had spent at least 500 million gold coins and tens of millions of supreme-grade spirit stones. As for that heaven-grade sword, it was borrowed from the Divine Central Continent. This time they had spent a lot. And all of this was to kill Xian. Xian's growth was too fast, and Blue Waves Academy was also developing rapidly. This time they were no longer afraid but fearful. If this continued, Xian and Blue Waves Academy would really change the structure of Azure Province, and even threaten their transcendent status. Moreover, they were already mortal enemies with Xian. There was no possibility of reconciliation. Dark World and Kuraki Academy had no way out. Time passed bit by bit. About 2 hours later, a man in black with a sword sheath on his back suddenly stepped into the wasteland. The man in black was holding his head, and his face was covered by a black mask, so his appearance couldn't be seen. And the direction he was walking in was the location of that sword light. Seeing this man in black, Mu Qingshuan's eyes narrowed. "He's here." The mistress of the Dark World nodded slightly and quietly retreated. Underground, more than 100 people were accumulating power, ready to attack at any time. All of them had extremely solemn expressions in their eyes as well. Because the person they were dealing with this time was the youngest sword master in the Pine Prefecture. Moreover, Xian still had the 12 golden men. But fortunately they were already prepared. As long as Xian came down, he would definitely die. On the ground, the man in black was getting closer and closer to that sword light. Just as he was about to enter the formation, he suddenly stopped. Xian was stunned. "Not going?" The man in black sat cross-legged on the ground and then began to meditate. Xian frowned. What the hell? Time passed bit by bit and the man in black didn't move to the limit. About 2 hours later, the mistress of the Dark World suddenly appeared beside Xian and said solemnly, "The situation isn't right." Xian stared fixedly at the man in black below, Find someone to test it out. The mistress of the dark world nodded. Right at this moment, the man in black suddenly took off his mask. When they saw the man's true appearance, Xian and the mistress of the dark world's faces instantly turned gloomy. The man in black wasn't Xian but Yunqi. Yunqi raised his head and looked somewhere in the sky and he grinned. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? Xuan's face was ugly to the extreme. At this moment the space in front of him trembled slightly. In the next moment Xuan's face changed drastically and he roared, "Immediately withdraw the formation and everyone hurry back to Kuraki College." With that he and the mistress of the dark world vanished. They were very fast and they vanished into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Great Cloud Realm, Kuraki College. A man in black with a sword sheath on his back was confronting a group of Kuraki College students. The man in black didn't make a move, and those Kuraki College students didn't dare to make a move either, because the person in front of them was Xian. Xian and the mistress of the dark world were extremely fast, and the two of them used less than half an hour to rush back to Kuraki College. Seeing that Kuraki College was safe and sound, Xian immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He and the mistress of the dark world landed in front of the man in black. Xian stared fixedly at the man in black. "Xian, you." At this moment, the man in black suddenly untied his black robe and revealed his true face. The moment he saw the man in black's true face, Xian felt as if he was struck by lightning, and his face instantly turned pale. Chapter 182. The reason why Xian lost his composure was because the black-robed man before him wasn't Xian. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. Wasn't Xian? Then what about the real Xian? As if he had thought of something, Xuan's expression suddenly changed and he turned his head to look at the sky. Heaven-grade sword. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, he'd vanished. The students of Kuraki College exchanged glances with each other, and they were dumbfounded. Not far away, under the black-robed man's black robe was a beautiful face. Jian Chuchu raised her head to look at the sky, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. I should have gotten it. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. 30 minutes ago in the extreme south. After Xian and the mistress of the dark world left, the people underground dispersed the grand formation and came out. Everyone was preparing to rush back to Kuraki College when a man suddenly looked up. Not far away, a cold light appeared. The man's expression changed drastically, and he was about to make a move, but it was too late. A sword directly pierced through his forehead. The man's body instantly stiffened and blood splattered from his forehead and the back of his head. Everyone's expression changed drastically, and they looked towards the distance. In the distance, a man was dashing over. When they saw this man, everyone was instantly horrified. Because this person was Xian. Wasn't Xian at Kuraki College? Everyone was stunned. At this moment Xian's speed increased explosively, and at the same time, the 7 swords flew into the crowd like 7 bolts of lightning. In an instant the heads of the 7 people flew off at the same time. Instant kill. As for Xian, he charged into the crowd as well. After he charged into the crowd, those people were about to make a move, but at this moment the 5 golden men suddenly appeared. In the blink of an eye, 7 or 8 people were instantly killed by the 5 golden men before they could even react. Everyone's expression changed drastically, and they retreated rapidly. At this moment, under the attack of Xian and the 5 golden men, they had completely lost the courage to resist. Because no matter if it was Xian or the 5 golden men, they were instantly killed. Their strength was suppressed without any suspense. By retreating, they had completely destroyed their only hope of survival. If a group of people joined forces, they would still have a fighting chance. In fact, it should be said that they definitely had a fighting chance. After all, these 5 golden men could only exist for 15 minutes. As long as they could drag it out for another 15 minutes, the 5 golden men would disappear and they would be able to stop Xian. In a one-on-one fight, no one could stop Xian, but in a one-on-one fight they could still beat him. At this moment Xian had not reached the level where he could fight 100 people alone. Unfortunately, at this moment, they were all scared out of their wits by Xian and the 5 golden men. They had no intention of fighting at all. Run. Everyone began to frantically flee in all directions, and Yi Xian's flying sword played a huge role at this moment. The flying swords shuttled back and forth ceaselessly in the field, and every flying sword that flew past would bring along a bloody head. In less than 15 minutes, Yi Xian and the 5 golden men had already killed over 70 people in the field, and over 30 people had already fled. These 30 people were all extremely powerful. They fled in different directions, and Yi Xian and the 5 golden men could do nothing to them. Especially the 5 golden men, who existed for an extremely short period of time. Therefore Yi Xian did not chase after them. After the 30 people escaped, Yi Xian led the 5 golden men directly underground. In a deep pit, there was a circular altar with a sword in a scabbard floating on it. Around the altar, there were 4 bolts of lightning that locked the sword tightly like iron chains. Heaven-grade sword. Yi Xian hurried over. Just as he got close, a sharp sword aura suddenly shot towards him. Yi Xian frowned and stabbed with his sword. At the tip of the sword, a cold gleam appeared. Bang! The sword aura shattered with a loud bang, and Yi Xian himself took over 10 steps back. On the altar, the sword in the scabbard suddenly trembled violently. Yi Xian did not dare to waste any more time. He immediately commanded the 5 golden men to charge over. Another wisp of sword energy shot out, but it was forcefully blocked by the 5 golden men. Soon the 5 golden men rushed to the altar and broke the 4 bolts of lightning that locked the sword. They broke it easily. Sensing this scene, Yi Xian did not feel happy at all. Instead, his face darkened. As soon as the 4 bolts of lightning were broken, the sword in the middle of the altar was about to escape, but it was held tightly by the hands of one of the golden men. At this time Yi Xian walked up the altar. Yi Xian did not touch the sword. Instead, he had the 5 golden men bring the sword to the 2nd level of the World Prison Pagoda. After entering the World Prison Pagoda, the sword that was originally trembling violently suddenly calmed down. However, it soon began to tremble slightly again. It was afraid. Yi Xian could clearly feel that the sword was afraid. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian closed the door of the 1st level and left the underground. Inside the World Prison Pagoda, after the golden man's spiritual qi was exhausted, he released his hands and the sword regained its freedom. In an instant, it suddenly flew around the 1st floor and released rays of sword light to attack the walls of the pagoda. Clearly it wanted to get out. Unfortunately, the World Prison Pagoda was sturdy enough. No matter how it slashed, the World Prison Pagoda did not suffer any damage. However, the sword did not stop. Instead, it became even fiercer. In an instant, the entire 1st level was filled with sword light and sword cries. It was very noisy. At this time, at the top of the World Prison Pagoda, a sword in the middle suddenly trembled. In an instant, the entire 1st level of the World Prison Pagoda became quiet. In the corner, a sword was trembling. Outside, after Yi Xian came out of the ground, Mo Yunqi came in front of him and grinned. The battlefield has been cleaned up. We have obtained more than 40 supreme-grade spirit weapons, 300 million gold coins, 300,000 supreme-grade spirit stones, and other miscellaneous items. As he said that, he sized up Yi Xian. Got it. Yi Xian nodded. Let's go. After that, the 2 of them quickly disappeared. Not long after Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi left, Mu Qingxian and the mistress of the dark world appeared above them. When they saw the corpses all over the place, their faces instantly became extremely ugly. Soon Mu Qingxian came to the underground. At this moment, the altar was already empty. Completely empty. Mu Qingxuan's face was already livid. He clenched his fists and his entire body was trembling slightly. He did not have the slightest bit of calmness and elegance from before. It was gone. A heaven-grade sword was gone. Mu Qingxuan's heart was bleeding. This sword was borrowed from the Divine Central Continent by Kuraki Academy. In other words, this sword did not belong to Kuraki Academy. It was lost. Even if they sold Kuraki Academy, they would not be able to afford it. At this moment, the mistress of the dark world suddenly said, "Does that sword have other mysteries?" Hearing this, Mu Qingxian suddenly woke up. He slowly closed his eyes and formed a strange hand seal with both hands. Soon the space in front of him began to tremble slightly. After an unknown amount of time, Mu Qingxian frowned deeply and his face was extremely gloomy. "I can't feel it," the mistress of the dark world said in a low voice. "He should not have officially subdued that sword. Once he does, he will definitely use it." At that time, activate the sword technique and the sword will counterattack. You will definitely be able to kill him. Xian shook his head. There was a trace of complexity in his eyes. We have thought too simply of this person. As he spoke, he returned underground and glanced at the corpses that covered the ground. A long time later he said in a soft voice, "This person should have seen through the trap that we set up, and that's why he acted in such a way. Without the suppression of the Grand Formation, he is already invincible in Qingzhou under 10,000 Laws realm." Invincible. The mistress of the dark world remained silent. Because that was the truth. Xian once again glanced at the corpses on the ground and his expression was somewhat dejected. This person has a sword immortal behind him. A sword immortal is enough to make both our forces not dare to use the 10,000 Laws realm and those above the 10,000 Laws realm. Besides the 10,000 Laws realm, Xian's strength is already invincible in Qingzhou. Now his Blue Waves Academy is rapidly developing. With this momentum, in at most a year the situation of Qingzhou will change. At that time, I'm afraid there will be no Dark World or Kuraki Academy in Qingzhou. Thorough. In fact, he had already seen through everything. And because he saw through everything, the previous plan was actually his last gamble. Unfortunately, it was a complete defeat. Xian didn't fall for it. On the contrary, Kuraki Academy and Dark World suffered a double loss. At this time, the mistress of the Dark World suddenly said, "Is there any reply from your headquarters?" Xian shook his head. "I don't know what they plan to do. However, reconciliation is absolutely impossible. Even if Xian takes the initiative to ask for peace, they absolutely won't dare to. If Xian doesn't die, sooner or later he will enter the Central Divine Prefecture. At that time the headquarters will definitely be fatally threatened. Now they are also in a difficult position. However, let's see how they make their move." The mistress of the Dark World nodded. "My Dark World too. Now both of us have already changed from taking the initiative to being passive. If they don't make their move, both our forces will have no choice but to withdraw from Qingzhou. At that time the development speed of Xian and Blue Waves Academy will be even more terrifying." Xian nodded. "Wait for the next part. As for that sword, I hope everything goes smoothly. Even if we can't kill him, we have to injure him severely." The mistress of the Dark World also nodded slightly. "If we can injure him severely at that time, it will be relatively easier to deal with him. However, this person is courageous and astute, and he himself is incomparably mysterious. That sword immortal is also the same. Until now, we still can't find any information about her." Speaking up to here, he sighed softly. Actually, at that time, Dark World and Xian didn't have any conflict. Unfortunately, Dark World brought this upon themselves and forcefully interfered, making him and Xian become mortal enemies. It would be a lie to say that he didn't regret it. Unfortunately, now Dark World was the same as Kuraki Academy, there was no way out. After a quarter of an hour, the two left. On the other side, Xian suddenly stopped riding the Black Wolf. He faced Yunqi beside him. "Bring the spoils of war back to the imperial capital and hand them all to Imperial Tutor Lu. She will distribute them." "What about you?" Yunqi asked. Xian grinned. "Let's go to the Great Cloud Realm." Yunqi's expression changed slightly. "Bandit Yi, don't act recklessly. The current you should properly develop your own strength." Xian shook his head. "All along they have been targeting me time and time again. Why do they dare to target me? Because they think that I am easy to bully. They think that I will endure it. But this time I don't want to endure it. Because if I endure for too long, I am afraid that my sword will rust." As he spoke, he grinned. "This time I am going to Great Cloud Realm, not for wealth, not for opportunities, not for cultivation. I am only going to kill." After speaking, he rode the Black Wolf and charged out. Very quickly, he disappeared from Yunqi's sight. P.S. Recently, a lot of people have come to the circle to diss me. Everyone don't care about them. They are just jealous of my handsomeness. As the saying goes, those who are not envied by others are ugly. Ask yourself honestly. My writing might not be particularly good, but I am definitely the most handsome in Vertical Book City. There is a poem that says, "The first time we met in Vertical Book City, the moment we saw Blue Luan, we were wrong for life. Most men in the world are fickle, only Blue Luan has high moral integrity." Li Bai. Genius 1 second. Remember website address. Mobile version website. Chapter 183. Great Cloud Realm. In fact, Zhou Xian had wanted to go to Great Cloud Realm a long time ago because he never liked to be passive. All this time, it had always been Kuraki Academy and Dark World attacking, while he could only passively receive their attacks. He didn't want to continue being passive. Previously he was passive because he was worried about Songlan Academy. But now, Songlan Academy was already on the right track. Even if he wasn't around, Songlan Academy would still be able to operate well. It was time to take the initiative. Just as he said, this trip to the Great Cloud Realm was not for cultivation, not for fortuitous encounters, not for wealth, but to kill. Murder. This time he was going to kill. Watching Zhou Xian disappear into the distance, Mo Yunqi was stunned for a long time. Finally he grinned and said, "Wait for us." With that he turned around and left. Songlan Academy. The current Azure Billow Academy had undoubtedly become the strongest power in the state of Jiang. Of course, this was inseparable from the help of the Kuraki Academy and the Immortal Intoxication Pavilion. If it wasn't for the assistance of these two forces, it would be impossible for Songlan Academy to develop so quickly. The reason why the state of Jiang and the drunken Immortal were helping them was obviously because of Zhou Xian. It should be said that the interests of the three parties were now tied together. Especially Jianggua, the reason why they helped Songlan Academy so much was because Jiangjia was at Songlan Academy. Songlan Academy's strongest Dao soldier was led by Jiangjio. Moreover, the relationship between Jiangjio and Zhou Xian was particularly unusual. Zhou Xian was strong, Songlan Academy was strong. It could be said that Jiang country was strong. The king of Jiang country and Jiang Yuetian were very clear about this. In the future, Jiangjio and Zhou Xian's goal was the Sea of Stars, not this mere Jiang country. As for Drunken Immortal Tavern, their target was not Azure Province, but the Central Divine Prefecture. They were waiting for Zhou Xian to go to the Central Divine Prefecture. It was only a matter of time before Zhou Xian went to the Central Divine Prefecture. The greater Zhou Xian's achievements in the future, the greater the rewards that the intoxicated Immortal House could obtain. The Drunken Immortal restaurant was doing business and they were very clear about one thing. Most of the time investors could be the most profitable. Kanglan Palace. Mo Yunqi, Jian Chuchu, Mo Yuan and the others were all present. Now the one in charge of Azure Billow Academy was Lu Jioga. Lu Jioga glanced at everyone. "Everyone, what do you think about Dean Yi going to Great Cloud Realm?" Mo Yuan shook his head. "How impulsive." Feng Lan also nodded. The most important thing right now is to develop Songlan Academy and raise his personal strength. If he goes to Great Cloud Realm now, I'm afraid there will be trouble again. Trouble? Lu Jioga laughed. If he doesn't go, there won't be any trouble? Everyone looked at Lu Jioga. Lu Jioga took a sip of tea and then he chuckled. Right now we are in a life and death situation with Kuraki Academy and the Dark World. If Headmaster Ji hadn't perished, I believe there might be room for negotiation. However, Headmaster Ji has fallen. Given our headmaster's personality, there is absolutely no possibility of reconciliation. Both Kuraki Academy and Dark World are aware of this as well. Hence, there is no possibility of reconciliation between the two sides. With that she looked at Mo Yuan and Feng Lan. The two of you must not have any thoughts of reconciliation. Otherwise, there will be no future for the Confucian Dao in him. Mo Yuan laughed bitterly. Don't worry. My Confucian Dao will not be as pedantic as before. We have to reason but we still have to fight. Lu Jioga nodded. She glanced at Mo Yunqi and the others. The few of you besides Jian Chuchu are not strong enough. There is already a huge gap between you and him. If you can't make up for this gap, the few of you will only get further and further away from him. Do you understand? Mo Yunqi laughed bitterly. This fellow's strength is growing so quickly. We are also helpless. Lu Jioga shook her head. From today onwards, besides Nji and Chuchu, the two of you will join my Songlan Academy's Dao soldiers and cultivate together with them. Mo Yunqi hesitated for a moment and said, "There is no need for the two of us, right?" Lu Jioga said indifferently, "You think you are very strong?" Mo Yunqi chuckled. "Although we are not comparable to Bandit Yi in this Songlan Academy, besides Bandit Yi, Bai Zai and I are considered the strongest, right?" Lu Jioga smiled faintly. She turned and looked outside the hall. As soon as she finished speaking, a burly middle-aged man walked into the hall. The middle-aged man looked at Mo Yunqi. Mo Yunqi stood up and walked to the side with Dezhu. In the next moment, Mo Yunqi suddenly vanished and numerous afterimages appeared. His speed was extremely fast. But bang! Along with a muffled sound, Mo Yunqi returned to his original position. In front of him the man called Dezhu didn't move at all. Mo Yunqi and Bai Zai's expressions became serious when they saw this scene. Dezhu bowed slightly to Lu Jiuge and Jiangjiu and then he turned and left. The hall suddenly went silent. Lu Jiuge glanced at Mo Yunqi. After the meeting I will take them to a secret place to train. You and Bai Zai can come or not. Besides that there is one more thing. Our Zhonglan Academy is about to advance into the Great Cloud Realm. Jiangjiu looked at Lu Jiuge. You want to go to the Great Cloud Realm to develop? Lu Jiuge shook her head and smiled. The Great Cloud Realm isn't our goal. The reason we want to advance into the Great Cloud Realm is because after our dean enters the Great Cloud Realm, the Great Cloud Realm will change. We have to be ready to go and support him at any time. Change. Hearing this, the hall quieted down. If Yi Xian went to the Great Cloud Realm, would something good happen? Obviously not. 2 hours later, Lu Jiuge and Zhonglan Academy's Dao soldiers left Zhonglan Academy. Bai Zai and Mo Yunqi were also among them. On a cloud ship in a private room inside the prison pagoda. Yi Xian stood in the corner of the first floor and in front of him was a sword with a scabbard. At this moment the sword was still trembling. Obviously it was very afraid. Heaven-class sword. Yi Xian's expression was extremely serious. Not because of the sword but because of the pagoda. Ever since he obtained this pagoda, it had been constantly refreshing his understanding. What kind of pagoda was this? Who exactly was that sword Immortal sister? Whose swords were those at the top of the pagoda? He had asked himself this question countless times. Unfortunately he never got an answer. Collecting his thoughts, Yi Xian faced the heaven-class sword in front of him. After a moment he turned and left. He did not choose to devour it. Because his current ability was not enough to devour a heaven-class sword. If he devoured it now he would most likely be devoured by the sword. No, he would definitely be devoured by the sword and with his current strength he would definitely not be able to withstand it. Moreover, the Spirit Elegance sword was only true low grade. If he devoured this heaven-class sword, the Spirit Elegance sword might cease to exist. He could not devour it. After Yi Xian left the prison pagoda, he came to the deck of the cloud ship. There were still some people on the deck. This time he did not reveal his identity on the cloud ship because he wanted to give Zhongmu Academy a surprise. Yi Xian came to the bow of the ship. From this position he could feel the vast horizon, the majestic mountains and the boundless land. Sensing all of this, Yi Xian's heart became even more calm. Swordsman cultivated the sword but also the heart. It should be said that all martial artists cultivated the heart. Heart, there was good heart and evil heart. Heart. Good and evil at the same time. What was good? What was evil? Yi Xian did not know, nor did he want to know. He only knew that he had to be good to those who were good to him. As for those who were bad to him, he naturally had to return the favor. Brother, please make way. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's ears. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and turned around. A woman was standing in front of him. She was wearing an ink-colored long dress. Her hair fell over her shoulders and her figure was lithe and graceful. She was very elegant and calm. Seeing Yi Xian's appearance, the woman was slightly stunned and exclaimed, "What happened to your eyes?" As she said this, she realized that she had been a bit presumptuous and smiled apologetically. "Sorry." Yi Xian smiled slightly. "It's fine." After saying this, he retreated to the side because he had been blocking the road. The woman nodded slightly. "Thank you." After saying this, she also came to the bow of the cloud ship. The woman looked down at the vast land below and smiled. "It's a great land." After saying this, she looked at Yi Xian who was not far away. "Friend, are you going to the Great Cloud Realm?" Yi Xian smiled. "The purpose of this cloud ship should be the Great Cloud Realm, isn't it?" The woman smiled slightly. "The Great Cloud Realm is the most prosperous place in my Qingzhou. It's naturally good to go and experience it." Yi Xian smiled and did not speak. At this moment, there were sounds of discussion behind her. The woman turned her head and looked. Not far away, some people were discussing spiritedly. It was very lively. These people were all discussing Yi Xian. Currently in this Qingzhou, Yi Xian was undoubtedly the most popular one. Such a young sword master had never appeared in Qingzhou for hundreds of years. The woman shook her head and smiled. She turned around and placed her hands on the pole, looking down at the vast land below. A light breeze blew her hair, quiet and elegant. Yi Xian stood at the top of the cloud ship. He liked this kind of tranquility because it allowed him to calm down. At this moment, 3 cloud ships suddenly appeared in the distant sky. The cloud ships were extremely fast and headed straight for their cloud ship. Everyone on the cloud ship also noticed it and looked at the 3 cloud ships. An old man suddenly appeared on the deck of the cloud ship. This person was the steward of this cloud ship. When the old man saw the 3 cloud ships, his expression changed drastically. Blood Wolf Mercenary Group. Everyone on guard. As the voice fell, some cloud ship guards appeared in the surroundings. When these guards saw the 3 cloud ships, their expressions instantly turned solemn. On the deck of the cloud ship, everyone was a little confused. At this moment, the 3 cloud ships had already approached and surrounded the cloud ship that Yi Xian was on from 3 directions. Opposite Yi Xian, a man walked to the bow of the cloud ship. The man looked down at Yi Xian and the others and grinned. This time we should have a good harvest. Yi Xian was stunned. Was this robbery? At this moment the man opposite him suddenly jumped onto their cloud ship. The man carried a machete and walked in front of Yi Xian. To be precise, he walked to the woman beside him and knelt on one knee in front of the woman. Big sister. The woman smiled slightly. Kill all the men, leave the women behind. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. My dad is seriously ill. He has uremia and diabetes. His leg is ulcerated and needs to be amputated. He is now in the operating room and will be operated on immediately. I came at 7 and was immediately busy until now to update my phone. May there be no illnesses in the world. One more chapter. I'm really sorry that I haven't been able to update 3 chapters recently. After this matter is over, I will resume updating. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. Please remember this site's address in a second. Mobile version. Chapter 184. Kill all the men, keep the women. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. He didn't expect this to come from the woman next to him. He did not know this woman, but from what he saw, she was very kind and polite. Moreover, she spoke very elegantly. She definitely did not look like a bad person. But at this moment Yi Xian did not expect the woman in front of him to say, "Kill all the men and leave all the women alive." The contrast was too big. Yi Xian looked at the woman. Why? Why? The woman was slightly startled. She turned to look at Yi Xian and smiled. What do you mean why? Yi Xian said, You don't look like a bad person. Bad person? The woman was stunned for a moment. Then she laughed heartily. She laughed heartily. A moment later she looked at Yi Xian and smiled. You don't think I'm a bad person? Yi Xian nodded. The woman shook her head. A person who looks especially good might not be a good person, and a person who looks especially bad might not be a bad person. Do you understand? If you don't, it's fine. There will be opportunities in your next life. Yi Xian was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. I've learned something. The woman glanced at Yi Xian and smiled. You're quite a calm person. You're quite extraordinary to be able to remain so calm at this point. But you still have to die. Yi Xian smiled. Why don't you bring me back to be your wife? Oh no, to be my big brother. The man beside Yi Xian laughed angrily. Just because you're blind? Be our big brother? The man's voice stopped abruptly. A sword was pointed at his forehead. The cloud ship suddenly fell silent. The woman in front of Yi Xian narrowed her eyes. There was a cold glint in her eyes. Yi Xian withdrew his sword. The man was enraged. How dare you? At this moment Yi Xian swung his sword. The man had only said 3 words when his head was sent flying. Everyone, the woman glared at Yi Xian. Who the hell are you? At this moment she was also extremely shocked. Because the person Yi Xian killed was at the divine combination realm. Even a god combination stage expert couldn't even retaliate against this sword. Yi Xian walked in front of the woman. He was very close to the woman and the woman gave off a faint fragrance. Yi Xian shook his head. You're quite pretty. Why would you want to be a thief? The woman said indifferently, I was forced by life. Yi Xian nodded. I'll give you a chance to live. Do you want it? The corner of the woman's mouth rose. I have 21 God Fusion Realm experts here and you want to give me a chance to live? Are you sure? Xian pointed to the right with his right hand. On a cloud ship on the right, a man's head flew off. Everyone on the cloud vessel was completely stunned when they witnessed this scene. The woman in front of Xian was also shocked. Is this the 10,000 Laws realm? On the other side, the manager of the cloud vessel seemed to have thought of something. His expression changed drastically, but soon, it turned into ecstasy and excitement. Xian opened his right hand and a sword fell into his hand. He wiped off the blood on the sword and touched the woman's cheek. A bloody mark appeared on the woman's face. Xian said with a smile, "One last chance. Surrender or die." The woman glared at Xian. "Who are you?" "Who are you?" Xian said, "You still haven't answered my question." The woman stared at Xian for a long time. After a long time she said, "You're Xian." Xian. The moment she said this, the entire cloud vessel went into an uproar. Hu and Qingzhou hadn't heard of Xian. On the cloud ship, everyone's gazes fell on Xian in an instant. Some were curious, some were excited, and some were fiery. Qingzhou's youngest sword master. The manager of the cloud vessel hurriedly walked up to Xian and bowed deeply. "Greetings, State Scholar Yi. I didn't know State Scholar Yi was on the cloud vessel. Please forgive me." Xian smiled. "It's none of your business." The manager bowed deeply again and retreated to the side. Xian looked at the woman. "Chance to live. Do you want it?" The woman grinned. "You're underestimating me." As she spoke, she suddenly floated backwards. Her speed was extremely fast, faster than lightning. At the same time, a silver ray shot towards Xian's forehead. However, before this silver ray could get close to Xian, it was shattered by his goodwill sword intent. At the same time, a sword ray appeared 300 meters away. 300 meters away, the woman's body suddenly stiffened in the air. There was a sword in her forehead. The woman looked at the distant sky in a daze. So fast. On the cloud vessel, Xian opened his right hand. The sword in the woman's forehead suddenly disappeared. When it reappeared, it was already in Xian's palm. However, it quickly flew out again. In an instant, the entire sky was filled with flying swords. 10 breaths later, no one from the Blood Wolf mercenary group was still alive. Xian looked through the spoils of war. There were 300 million gold coins and 500,000 top-grade spirit stones. He estimated that he now had nearly 1 billion gold coins in cash, and about 2 million top-grade spirit stones, excluding the ones used to activate the Golden Man. As for the top-grade spirit weapons and bright-grade equipment, he left them in Songlan Academy. Songlan Academy needed them more than him. He also believed that Songlan Academy would give him a big surprise in the future. He promised Old Ji that he would make Songlan Academy the best academy in Azure Firmament World. He would definitely do it. At this moment, the manager suddenly said, "State Scholar Yi, what are your plans for the 3 cloud vessels?" 3 cloud vessels. Xian was slightly stunned and then asked, "How much is one ship worth?" The manager thought for a moment and then said, "About 100 million for one ship." State Scholar Yi wants to sell it, my drunken immortal, and can buy it. 300 million. Xian nodded, "Sure. Convert the gold coins into top-grade spirit stones and then give it to State Zhang's 5th building master. Tell him that I am repaying the debt." The manager bowed slightly, "Okay." After that he was about to say something, but at this moment a cloud vessel guard suddenly came. "Steward Wu, we have entered the Great Cloud Territory." Great Cloud Territory. Xian turned around and looked into the distance. Although he had no eyes, he could still feel everything. At the end of the distance there was the outline of a city. It was very big, several times bigger than all the cities he had seen in Azure Province. "Is this the imperial capital of Great Cloud Empire?" Xian asked. The manager shook his head and said with a smile, "State Scholar Yi, this is not the imperial capital of Great Cloud Empire, but a small city on the border of Great Cloud Empire called Nanqing City with a population of about 5 million. A small city. Xian was a little shocked because even State Zhang's imperial capital wasn't so big. It seemed that he had greatly underestimated Great Cloud Empire. Not only Great Cloud Empire. He was afraid that Dark World and Kuraki Academy weren't so simple. But this was also normal. These forces had been passed down for so many years, so they definitely wouldn't be simple. Steward Wu said again, State Scholar Yi, the cloud vessel will stop in the city for a while to refuel. Although Nanming City is the capital of Great Cloud Empire, it is too far from the imperial capital. In addition, Great Cloud Empire has been corrupted in recent years. Therefore, many places are quite chaotic, especially this small city in a remote place. State Scholar Yi, please be careful if you want to disembark. Yi Xian nodded, okay. As though he recalled something, he asked again, is there Kuraki Academy in the city? Steward Wu nodded, yes. Kuraki Academy, Dark World, and various aristocratic families have infiltrated various cities in Great Cloud Empire. Some cities even belong to Kuraki Academy and these aristocratic families. If it wasn't for King Kaoshan, I'm afraid the entire Great Cloud Empire would have been completely divided by these forces. King Kaoshan. Yi Xian made a mental note of these 3 words and nodded slightly. Got it. Steward Wu bowed slightly and left. Soon the cloud vessel entered Nanqing City and slowly descended. Yi Xian didn't stop on the cloud vessel. Instead, he got off and walked towards the street in the distance. Steward Wu quickly sent a few guards of drunken Immortal in to follow him from afar. Although the city was large, the inside of the city was desolate. There were not many people on the streets. At a glance, it was quite desolate. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Yi Xian took out his spirit grace sword, which indicated that he was a swordsman. On the street, Yi Xian walked slowly. All of a sudden, a scream came from the right. Yi Xian turned around and saw a group of men chasing a woman in an alley on the right. The woman was panicking as she ran towards Yi Xian. Behind her, several men were chasing the woman like a cat playing with a mouse. Soon, the woman reached Yi Xian and knelt before Yi Xian. Help, help! Yi Xian bent down and held the woman's arm with his left hand. Just when he was about to pull her up, the woman suddenly raised her head. In the next moment, a dagger was already at Yi Xian's throat, but it couldn't move any further because Yi Xian's sword had already pierced into the woman's throat. The scene fell into silence. The woman stared at Yi Xian. At this moment, there wasn't a trace of panic on her face, only resentment. How did you know? Yi Xian shook his head. Firstly, it's too much of a coincidence. Do you think I have the chance to save the damsel in distress? I don't believe it. Secondly, you're running too normally. Under normal circumstances, your steps should be messy, but you're very normal. Thirdly, your eyes. There's panic in your eyes, but there's no despair. Fourthly, actually, all of these are just my wild guesses. I'm just instinctively on guard. She spat out a mouthful of blood essence and fell to the ground. Yi Xian turned around. On the ground in front of him, some strange runes suddenly appeared. Soon, a strange energy fluctuation appeared around him. Formation. Not far away stood an old man. This old man was none other than the cloud ship's Steward Wu. Behind Steward Wu there were 7 men in black. All of them were at the peak of the Divine Unity realm. Steward Wu looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Surprised? This is a spirit sealing formation specially prepared for you. Now try circulating your profound energy. Yi Xian circulated the profound energy within his body, but the profound energy within his body was deathly still and he couldn't circulate it at all. Steward Wu smiled. Yi Xian, you underestimate our Dark World and Kuraki Academy. P.S. I've been typing on my phone lately, so there might be some typos. Sorry. The hospital is too torturous. Genius in a second, remember this site's address. Mobile version. Chapter 185. Dead End. Yi Xian laughed. When he saw Yi Xian laugh, Steward Wu frowned. He still has a trump card. Without hesitation he waved his right hand. Kill. As soon as he spoke, the 7 men in black behind him dashed out. They were all top-notch assassins and were extremely fast. In the blink of an eye they had arrived before Yi Xian. Obviously, the spirit sealing formation was only targeting Yi Xian because the men in black were not affected. At this moment, bang, bang, bang. As a series of muffled sounds rang out, the black-clothed men retreated rapidly. Steward Wu's expression changed. This was because there were 5 golden men standing before Yi Xian. However, the 5 golden men were not affected by the spirit sealing formation at all. Naturally, they would not be affected by the spirit sealing formation because the formation inside the bodies of the 5 golden men was much more powerful than the spirit sealing formation. After repelling the men in black, the 5 golden men suddenly bombarded the ground. Steward Wu's eyelids twitched. Retreat. Retreat. Steward Wu and the others turned and ran. The moment he knew that the formation was useless, he chose to retreat decisively because once the formation was broken, Xian would be invincible under the Dharma realm. He was invincible. Before Steward Wu and the others could run far away, an explosion suddenly sounded behind them. The formation was broken. Manager Wu was horrified in his heart and he suddenly sped up. Right at this moment, a sword suddenly appeared in front of him. Manager Wu's pupils constricted, and he was just about to attack when the sword directly pierced through the center of his forehead. He could not fight back at all. At the same time, the black-clothed men by Manager Wu's side instantly fell to the ground as well. That was because a sword had pierced through their foreheads as well. Behind them, Xian walked over slowly. Looking at the corpses on the ground, Xian shook his head. What a waste of my spiritual stones. As soon as he spoke, he pointed with his finger and the swords flew back into the sword box in his hand. After cleaning up the battlefield, he shook his head. Because these people were too poor. They were so poor that they did not even have 50 million gold coins in total. Top-grade spirit stones were even rarer. As if he had thought of something, he turned his head and looked not far away. There were 2 people standing there. Mu Qingxian and the mistress of the An Empire. In fact, when Xian left the country of Jiang, the Kuraki Academy and the Dark World had already sent people to investigate Xian's whereabouts. They naturally had to keep track of Xian's movements at all times. When they learned that Xian had come to the Great Cloud Realm, the 2 of them were already a little flustered. Previously, Xian was passively defending, but now Xian took the initiative to attack. In a situation where the 10,000 Laws realm could not make a move, who could stop Xian? If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. 1. But the King Dharma realm couldn't make a move. Because Xian also had a backer. If there was no backer, the 2 forces could still bully the weak and play however they wanted. But the problem was that Xian's backer was too terrifying. Killing the Dharma defensive realm was like killing a chicken, which made them not dare to bully the weak anymore. Helpless. Aggrieved. This was the mood of Mu Qingxian and the mistress of the Dark World. Those who could kill Xian did not dare to make a move, and those who could make a move could not kill Xian. How helpless and aggrieved was this? Xian did not speak and turned to leave. Say what? He had nothing to say to the Kuraki Academy and the Dark World. Mu Qingxian suddenly appeared not far in front of Xian. Xian stopped in his tracks. Mu Qingxian said, "There is no possibility of reconciliation in this matter, right?" Reconciliation? Xian grinned. Who was the one who said to me that I would not rest until one of us is dead? It seems to be you. Why now you don't want to rest until one of us is dead? Mu Qingxian said calmly, "Do you really think you will win? Xian, if we continue to fight, both sides will suffer." Xian shook his head. "Don't talk so much nonsense. If it's not you guys killing me, then it's me killing you." As he said this, he walked around Mu Qingxian and walked into the distance, but soon he stopped again. "By the way, may I ask how to get to the Kuraki Academy?" Mu Qingxian, huh. Amidst his laughter, Xian disappeared at the end of the street. After Xian left, Mu Qingxian slowly closed his eyes. Beside him, the mistress of the Dark World said in a low voice, "Were you trying to stall for time by making peace with him?" Mu Qingxian nodded. "If this person goes to the Imperial Capital, no matter if he goes to the Dark World or my Kuraki Academy, you and I will not be able to stop him. Only the headquarters of the Divine Central Continent can stop him. And the headquarters needs time. The reason I made peace before was to buy some time, and this person has clearly seen through my intentions." The mistress of the Dark World said in a low voice, "What now?" Mu Qingxian opened his eyes and looked into the distance. "We must stop this person from entering the Great Cloud Imperial Capital. Otherwise, it will be a disaster for the Dark World and my Kuraki Academy. Let's go and find the Great Cloud Reliance King." After saying this, the 2 disappeared. In the city, Xian found the Kuraki Academy, but unfortunately there was no one in the Kuraki Academy in the city. They all left. Not only did they leave, but all the valuable things in the entire Kuraki Academy had been taken away. Xian could not help but swear at her. Xian did not stop. He turned and left. And now his goal was the Great Cloud Imperial Capital. Great Cloud Imperial Palace. A woman was sitting on it. This chapter is not over, please turn the page. In front of a pond, her feet were floating in the pond. Around her feet there were countless small black fish. The woman lowered her head and looked at the small fish in the pond. Her pair of pure white jade-like feet gently swayed in the water. Seeing the small fish constantly sucking on her little feet, the corners of her mouth couldn't help but curl up into a smile. At this moment, an armored woman with a long sword at her waist walked in front of the woman by the pond and bowed slightly. "My King Dean Mu, Mistress of the Dark World, requests an audience." The corner of the woman's mouth rose slightly, and her smile became more charming. "Please." The armored woman turned and left. After a while, Mu Xian and Mistress of the Dark World came to the side of the pond. When he saw the woman, Mu Xian bowed slightly. "Miss Lian." Very polite. In fact, he did not dare to be impolite. Although the Great Cloud Empire was not as strong as before, no one dared to underestimate it. After all, it was once the #1 overlord of Qingzhou. Moreover, this Lian Wanli was even more unfathomable. At least, Kuraki Academy and the Dark World did not know Lian Wanli's true strength. Lian Wanli slowly got up, walked in front of the two and smiled slightly. "Are the two of you here for that Xian?" Mu Xian nodded. "Yes. The two of us want to ask for help from Miss Lian." Lian Wanli smiled and said, "You are too polite. Kuraki Academy, Dark World and my Great Cloud Empire are one and should help each other. How about this? I will send out 50 Black Flame cavalrymen. What do the two of you think?" Mu Xian was overjoyed and quickly said, "That would be great." Lian Wanli smiled slightly. "However, in order to give an explanation to those stubborn old men in the imperial court, this king hopes that the two of you can give some compensation. It is not much. How about 10 million best grade spirit stones as a token?" Mu Xian and Mistress of the Dark World hesitated. Lian Wanli said indifferently, "Do the two of you think it is not worth it?" Mu Xian smiled bitterly. "It is worth it, of course it is worth it. 10 million it is." Lian Wanli smiled and said, "Straightforward. And that Xian is not simple. 50 Black Flame cavalrymen might not be enough. How about this? I will gather all the great families and let them contribute. As long as all the powerhouses in my Great Cloud Realm join forces, it should not be difficult to get rid of a trifling Xian." Mu Xian smiled and said, "This is naturally for the best. My Great Cloud Realm is united. We are naturally not afraid of that Xian." Lian Wanli suddenly frowned. "It is just that these families probably won't cooperate." Mu Xian smiled and said, "Rest assured, you and I have spoken. They won't dare to not cooperate." Lian Wanli smiled. "That is good." Mu Xian and Mistress of the Dark World thanked him repeatedly, then turned and left. After the two left, Lian Wanli shook his head with a face full of indignation. This Kuraki Academy and Dark World are too bad. So many people bullying one person, really shameless. This king really can't stand it anymore. Come, bring this king's heavy azure dragon blade. This king wants to peel a pear. The Armored Woman. End of this chapter. Chapter 186. Great Cloud Imperial Capital. After leaving South City, Xian boarded another cloud ship, and the destination of this cloud ship was Great Cloud Imperial Capital. On the cloud ship, a steward of drunken Immortal came in front of Xian. The steward bowed deeply to Xian. "Young Master Yi, drunken Immortal has investigated Steward Wu's matter. This person is the spy of Kuraki Academy in Drunken Immortal For causing trouble to young Master Yi, I apologize to young Master Yi on behalf of Drunken Immortal Xian smiled and said, "It's fine." The steward bowed again. "My Drunken Immortal has sent a spy to Great Cloud Imperial Capital. If there is any movement in Great Cloud Imperial Capital, my Drunken Immortal will immediately inform young Master Yi." Xian nodded. "Thank you for your trouble." The steward said, "If young Master Yi has any instructions, just call me at any time." After saying that, he turned and left. Soon 2 maids came up behind Xian with 2 fruit trays in their hands. The 2 maids lowered their heads, their faces flushed. Xian turned around, and when he saw the 2 maids he suddenly froze. He knew them. These two maids were the same two maids he met on the cloud ship when he returned to Zhonglan Academy. At that time these two maids were going to drug him. Xian picked up a fruit plate and said with a smile, "There won't be any drug, right?" Hearing this, the two maids lowered their heads even more and their faces became even redder. Seeing the two maids' shy appearance, Xian couldn't help but laugh. After a moment, the maid on the left suddenly plucked up her courage and looked at Xian. Are you really sword master?" Xian smiled and said, "Of course. And do you think I'm very handsome?" The maid sized up Xian, covered her mouth and laughed. "I have never seen such a thick-skinned swordsman, you are the first." Xian was speechless. The maid on the right suddenly pulled the maid on the left and said softly, "Tong Tong, don't talk nonsense." The maid named Tong Tong looked at Xian and blinked. "You won't be angry, right?" Xian deliberately put on a straight face. "What do you think?" Tong Tong grinned, revealing a row of white teeth. "You won't be angry. Because you are a good person. Dandan and I have heard of your deeds in Mizar City." As she spoke, she pulled the arm of the woman beside her called Dandan and said with a tender smile, "Last time she was the one who wanted to drug you." Xian was a little curious. "What drug?" Hearing this, the two women's faces instantly turned red, especially the servant named Dan Dan. She covered her face in embarrassment. "Fine." Xian was speechless. From the looks of these two little girls, they were definitely not good medicine. Sigh. Xian let out a deep sigh. He was too handsome and he had almost made many women commit crimes. At this moment, Tong Tong suddenly walked to Xian's side and chuckled. "Let me tell you a secret. Dan Dan's dream is to marry a swordsman. Do you want to die?" Dan Dan suddenly hugged Tong Tong and kept tickling her. Soon the two women were chasing each other on the cloud ship, laughing. Xian shook his head and smiled. He turned to face the distance. A light breeze blew, warming him up. And at this moment, a white light suddenly appeared in the distant sky. The speed of the white light was small at first, but in the blink of an eye, it had increased dozens of times. Xian's expression changed drastically. He turned around abruptly. "Careful." As his voice fell, his figure trembled and he appeared in front of Tong Tong, who was closest to him. He blocked Tong Tong with one hand and was about to catch Dan Dan, who was still a few feet away from him. Boom. A beam of light that was hundreds of feet long suddenly hit the cloud ship. In an instant, the entire cloud ship collapsed with a loud bang and countless fragments flew in all directions. In the sky, Xian was falling rapidly with the two women in his arms. Behind him was his goodwill sword intent, and this goodwill sword intent was constantly being destroyed. Every time it was destroyed, a trace of blood flowed from the corner of Xian's mouth. Soon, just as he was about to fall to the ground, a sword suddenly stopped him. The sword withstood most of the falling force. Just like that, Xian slowly landed on the ground with the two women in his arms. Xian hurriedly put the two women in his arms on the ground. When he saw the two women's condition, his expression instantly sank. Tong Tong was fine because he had protected her at the first moment, so she was not seriously injured. As for Dan Dan, Dan Dan was the first to suffer the impact of the beam of light. The meridians and organs in her body were all ruptured. Xian hurriedly took out a golden sore pill and fed it to Dan Dan. However, blood kept flowing from her mouth. Dan Dan looked at Xian. She slowly raised her hands and hugged Xian's cheeks. Tears kept flowing from her eyes. I don't want to die." Xian hurriedly took out a few more pills and fed them to Dan Dan. However, it was still useless. Blood kept flowing from the corner of her mouth, and the vitality in her body was also rapidly disappearing. Seeing this scene, Xian's tears instantly flowed. I'm sorry. Dan Dan gently wiped the tears from Xian's cheeks with both hands. Are you crying for me?" Xian held Dan Dan's hands tightly and said painfully, "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." Dan Dan grinned, and this grin caused more blood to flow out. She looked at Xian. Suddenly she smiled. "Although I can't marry a swordsman to be able to die in the arms of a swordsman. Moreover, in the arms of our Qingzhou's most powerful swordsman, I..." At this point, more blood gushed out of her mouth. At the same time, her breath was also getting weaker. At this time, she gently stroked Xian's cheeks. Her eyes began to slowly close. "If only I could live. That would be great." Xian hugged Dan Dan tightly. His whole body was trembling. Sensing that Dandan's breath was getting weaker, he suddenly raised his head and roared. At this moment, countless white mist suddenly gushed out of his body. Soon, all the white mist poured into Dandan's body. The substantial Goodwill Sword essence. More and more Goodwill Sword essence flowed into Dandan's body. Soon, her broken meridians and organs were tightly wrapped by the Goodwill Sword essence. At this time, an old man suddenly landed beside Zhou Xian. The old man quickly walked in front of Zhou Xian and said, "State scholar Yi old man, 6th floor master of drunken immortal, and can you?" Zhou Xian hurriedly said, look at her, look at her. Hurry up." The 6th floor master looked at Dandan in Zhou Xian's arms. He placed his right hand on Dandan's pulse. After a moment he frowned deeply. Although her organs are protected by state scholar Ye's sword essence, but how? Zhou Xian directly interrupted the 6th floor master's words. The 6th floor master said in a deep voice, "Heart shield pill. This pill can protect her heart and meridians. It can also slowly heal her. However, one pill is probably not enough. She needs to take it for a long time. This heart shield pill costs about 60 million gold coins." Zhou Xian said, "I will pay for it. Give it to me immediately." The 6th floor master glanced at Zhou Xian. He hesitated for a moment and said, "Young Master Yi, she is just a maidservant." Zhou Xian suddenly turned to the 6th floor master and shouted angrily, "Is a maidservant's life so worthless?" The 6th floor master did not say anything else. He turned and left. In less than a quarter of an hour he returned in front of Zhou Xian. He handed a white jade bottle to Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian hurriedly opened the white jade bottle and poured out a pill for Dandan to consume. As soon as the heart shield pill entered her body, a strange energy instantly spread to her limbs and bones. Soon, Dandan's aura gradually stabilized. Sensing this, Zhou Xian immediately heaved a sigh of relief. At this time the 6th floor master said, "Young Master Yi, the previous matter has been investigated. The ones who attacked the cloud ship were Kuraki Academy and Dark World. That light beam was fired by the cloud-piercing cannon. The cloud-piercing cannon is comparable to a true-grade spiritual artifact. It is specially used to deal with air attacks. Their actions are to prevent you from entering the imperial capital. And now you cannot ride the cloud ship." Kuraki Academy. Dark World. Zhou Xian's face was incomparably gloomy. To be precise, it was ferocious. After a moment Zhou Xian faced the 6th floor master and said, "If I don't ride the cloud ship, how long will it take to reach the imperial capital?" The 6th floor master pondered for a moment and said, "Even if I ride the fastest black flame horse, I'm afraid it will take at least half a month." "Half a month?" Zhou Xian shook his head. "Too slow. Is there any other way?" The 6th floor master thought for a moment and shook his head. "The fastest way is to ride the black flame horse. Even with the black flame horse, you might not be able to reach the imperial capital in half a month. That's because the journey to the imperial capital is too long. Even the black flame horse can't pass through some remote areas." At this point he hesitated for a moment and said, "You can stay here for now. We can discuss this further." "Discuss further?" Zhou Xian shook his head. "They are after my life. What's the point of discussing?" The 6th floor master sighed. "My friend, even if you want to ride the black flame horse, you won't be able to because the black flame horse only exists in the Great Cloud Empire. You..." At this moment he suddenly turned to look at a place not far away. There was a horse galloping towards him. There was a patch of black flame under its feet. Black flame horse. Soon the black flame horse arrived beside Zhou Xian and stopped there quietly. Seeing this, the 6th floor master's face sank. Zhou Xian remained silent for a long time. Finally he faced the 6th floor master. "Take care of them. I will pay for the elixirs they consume." After saying that, he flicked his finger and a golden card landed in front of the 6th floor master. Zhou Xian faced Tong Tong and Dandan. "Take care of yourself. Live well." After saying that he turned to leave. At this moment, Tong Tong suddenly grabbed Zhou Xian's hand. Zhou Xian turned his head. Tong Tong stared at Zhou Xian. "We are just lowly maidservants." Zhou Xian shook his head. "There is no difference in life. Take care of yourself." After saying that he leaped onto the black flame horse. Soon he disappeared from the sight of Tong Tong and the 6th floor master. Looking at Zhou Xian, Tong Tong was a little dazed. Great Cloud Empire, Imperial Palace. A woman sat in front of the Golden Dragon Palace. She lowered her head and counted the ants in front of her. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, you little fellows, don't move. Don't move. Don't. I'm so angry. I counted wrong again. After saying that, she snorted heavily and started counting again. 1, 2. At this moment, an armored woman walked to the woman's side. Your Majesty, Kuraki College and Dark World are attacking again. After a while, the woman suddenly raised her head and looked at the armored woman. He is willing to spend hundreds of millions to save those 2 maidservants? The armored woman nodded. The woman was silent for a moment. Then she smiled. Interesting. The armored woman said again. The Black Flame Cavalry and experts from various aristocratic families have gone to stop them. Your Majesty. The woman waved her hand. Don't bother me. I want to count the ants here. 1, 2, 3. The armored woman. P.S. There are some changes in the recent updates. Sorry everyone. Clasped fist. Chapter 187. Kuraki Academy. At this moment, all the instructors and elders of Kuraki Academy were gathered within the hall. There were a total of 9 Dharma Realm experts within the hall. Mu Qingxian was seated at the seat of the host. Mu Qingxian glanced at them. With Yi Xian's current speed, he'll be able to arrive at the imperial capital in less than half a month. At that time, so long as the Dharma Realm doesn't act, then no one in the imperial capital will be able to stop him. But if he comes to our academy, then we can only watch as he slaughters the students of our academy. The Dharma Realm experts couldn't act. The expressions of everyone here instantly turned gloomy. They wanted to act, but that sword Immortal was like a sword that hung above their heads, so they didn't dare act rashly at all. Li Mu from the Central Divine Prefecture was the best example. He was an expert at the law control realm. However, he'd still died, and he died in such a humiliating manner. There was no solution. This was a situation that was impossible to resolve. Meanwhile, an old man suddenly stepped forward. It's clearly impossible to seek peace in such a situation. Since we can't do that, then we can only fight to the death. As he spoke, he gazed at Mu Qingxian. Has the headquarters replied? The headquarters. Everyone here gazed at Mu Qingxian when they heard this. Presently, their only hope was the headquarters of Kuraki Academy. Mu Qingxian nodded. The headquarters needs some time. The old man asked, how long? Mu Qingxian spoke in a low voice. At least a month. The old man frowned. Why is it taking so long? It only takes a few days for the Central Divine Prefecture to travel to Pine Prefecture through teleportation formations. Why is it taking so long? Mu Qingxian glanced at the old man. Do you think anyone in the younger generation of the headquarters can kill Yi Xian? The surroundings instantly fell silent when they heard this. At this moment, they noticed to their astonishment that not to mention Great Cloud Realm's Kuraki Academy, no one in the younger generation of the Central Divine Prefecture could stop Yi Xian. Even if it was the headquarters of the Central Divine Prefecture, no one in the younger generation could stop Yi Xian. Besides the monstrous geniuses in the top 10 of the monstrous genius rankings, no one in the younger generation of the Central Divine Prefecture could stop Yi Xian. The Sword Master. Even in the Central Divine Continent, a sword master who wasn't even 20 years old would be a top-notch genius. In the hall, the old man sighed softly. This person is unstoppable. Li Xuanzong, the dean of the state of Zhong's Kuraki Academy, was truly foolish back then. From the very beginning until now, it would be a lie if Kuraki Academy said he didn't regret it. Because the school that Yi Xian wanted to join the most was Kuraki Academy. If Yi Xian had joined Kuraki Academy, things wouldn't have turned out like this. Mu Qingxian said indifferently, the matter is already over, there's no need to mention it again. The headquarters has already asked for help from another place. Can be said that the ones who want Yi Xian dead are not only my Kuraki Academy and the Dark World. There is another faction that has already contacted my Kuraki Academy. We only need to stop Yi Xian from entering the imperial capital. At the very least, we can't let him enter the imperial capital within a month. Below, the old man said in a deep voice, this person obtained a flaming horse, so he must have received help from someone in the dark. Could it be the Great Cloud Empire? After all, only the Great Cloud Empire has flaming horses. Mu Qingxian shook his head. The Great Cloud Empire also has a grudge with Xian, so they have no reason to help Xian. Moreover, if the Great Cloud Empire wants to unify Azure Province, they must get rid of Xian. Therefore, this matter is definitely not the work of the Great Cloud Empire. Speaking of this, he seemed to have thought of something and a cold light flashed in his eyes. This matter might be the work of the Drunken Immortal Inn. Drunken Immortal Inn. Currently, everyone in the world knows that the Drunken Immortal Inn has been supporting Xian. At this moment, the space in front of Mu Qingxian suddenly trembled. After about 15 minutes, Mu Qingxian looked at the people below and said with some excitement, "This time Xian will definitely die. Pass down the order. Do everything possible to stop Xian from entering the imperial capital and wait for reinforcements." Yes. The people in the hall replied in unison and then left. Country of Jiang Azure Wave Academy. In front of the Azure Wave Palace, Missouri Yuan sat in front of the stone steps, and beside him was Feng Lan. Mo Yuan looked at the letter in his hand and after a long time the letter in his hand burned. "What's wrong?" Feng Lan asked. Mo Yuan said softly, "He has already entered the Great Cloud Realm, and Kuraki Academy and Dark World are doing their best to stop him from entering the Great Cloud Imperial Capital. I'm afraid his situation is not too good." Feng Lan said solemnly, "Take action." Mo Yuan shook his head. "If the Confucian sect takes action, although we can solve his current predicament, it will bring him more trouble. Inform little Lu to be ready to let that Dao soldier enter the Great Cloud Realm at any time." Feng Lan said solemnly, "Although that Dao soldier has cultivated the military heart sutra, it has only been trained for a short time, and its combat power is probably insufficient." Mo Yuan smiled. "If it doesn't experience battles, this Dao soldier will never be able to grow." Feng Lan thought about it and then nodded. "That's true." After saying that, he got up and left. Mo Yuan looked up at the sky and said softly, "Kuraki Academy, I advise you to be kind." In the vast mountain range, Xian rode the black flame horse and galloped all the way. It has to be said that the black flame horse was really fast. If it was an ordinary person, they would not be able to withstand the speed of the black flame horse because it was too fast. On the back of the horse, Xian was expressionless. Behind him there was a sword box and inside the sword box there were 7 swords. Half an hour later, Xian arrived at an ancient city. Pingyang City. The Great Cloud Realm was not like the country of Jiang. The Great Cloud Realm was too big, and if he kept going around let alone half a month he would not be able to reach the Great Cloud Imperial Capital in 2 months. After entering Pingyang City, Xian did not stop and went straight to the Imperial Capital. However, when he arrived at the city gate, the gate was tightly shut. More than 50 men in black appeared on the city wall. These men in black all held longbows in their hands, and the arrows were already knocked on the bowstrings. Apart from them, several thousand guards suddenly appeared behind Xian, holding long spears in their hands. Obviously there was an ambush here. In front of the city wall, an old man suddenly appeared and stared at Xian. "Xian, this is not the country of Jiang. You can't come and go as you please. Think." At this moment the sword box on Xian's back suddenly trembled slightly, and in the next moment, 7 swords suddenly soared into the sky. Seeing this scene, the old man's expression changed drastically. "Release the arrows." On the city wall, the arrows in the hands of the 50 men in black had just flown out, and in the next moment, their heads flew off one after another. In less than 2 breaths of time, the heads of the 50 men on the city wall were all removed. Below, the 50 arrows were all blocked by Xian's spirit elegant sword, because these arrows were not as fast as his sword. In fact, it should be said that there was no comparison at all. Soon, the 7 swords flew back into the sword box one after another, and behind Xian, the soldiers were already stunned on the spot and none of them dared to make a move. Holding the spirit elegant sword, Xian pointed at the old man in front of the city gate. "Can you stop them?" As soon as he said that, the black flame horse under him leaped and charged toward the city gate. At the same time, a sword directly slashed at the city gate. Boom! The city gate suddenly collapsed and Xian left in a cloud of dust. Outside the city, Xian suddenly stopped because there were nearly 1,000 cavalrymen hundreds of feet away from him. Great Cloud Cavalrymen. In front of the cavalrymen, the leader of the cavalrymen suddenly roared. "Kill." As soon as he said that, 1,000 cavalrymen charged straight at Xian. 1,000 cavalrymen was not a lot, but when they formed a formation and charged together, it was still very terrifying. Xian was expressionless. He patted the black flame horse lightly with both legs and leaped into the air. When he landed on the ground, he tapped his right foot lightly and flew high into the air again. At the same time, 7 flying swords suddenly flew out of the sword case on his back. Chi. Dozens of feet away, more than 30 cavalrymen fell to the ground almost at the same time. And that group of cavalrymen also drowned Xian in an instant. There was a moment of silence. Among the cavalrymen, the sound of swords rang out. Then 7 sword lights shot out from the group of cavalrymen. Wherever the sword lights passed, great cloud cavalrymen were directly cut in half at the waist. In front of the city gate, the old man stared at Xian in the group of cavalrymen, his hands trembling. Xian. Before this, he had only heard of Xian's name and didn't have an accurate understanding of Xian. But now he knew him. Sword Master. A sword master who was less than 20 years old had such terrifying strength. At this moment, not far away, nearly 300 cavalrymen had fallen, and more were falling to the ground. No one could stop Xian's sword. A quarter of an hour later, there were less than 500 cavalrymen left. Without the power to charge, the momentum and strength of these cavalrymen were also greatly reduced. Slaughter. Xian was still slaughtering. An hour later, there were less than 100 cavalrymen left, and these 100 cavalrymen were already far away from Xian. Corpses were everywhere around Xian. Xian stood among the countless corpses, holding the Lingxiu sword. A smear of blood slowly flowed down the blade of the Lingxiu sword. Xian walked toward the 100 cavalrymen with the sword in his hand. Seeing this scene, the 100 cavalrymen's expressions changed drastically. At this moment they were already afraid. Really afraid. In the beginning they were not afraid when there were only 1,000 people. What were they afraid of when it was 1,000 against 1? But now, in the blink of an eye, there were only 100 of them left. At this moment Xian suddenly sped up. Seeing this, the remaining 100 cavalrymen turned and ran, but Xian clearly didn't want to let them go. 7 swords suddenly flew out of the sword case on his back, and the next moment, the heads of more than a dozen cavalrymen in the distance were directly sent flying. However, there were still some cavalrymen who had fled. Because these cavalrymen fled in different directions. In the distance, Xian stood in front of a cavalryman who was still twitching. This cavalryman looked at Xian in fear. He wanted to escape, but he couldn't escape at all. Because just now, both his legs had been chopped off by Xian's sword. Xian lowered his head and looked at his right hand. At this moment he realized that his right hand had already lost all feeling. Numb from killing. At this moment, a middle-aged man appeared a few dozen feet away from Xian. Mu Qingxian. Mu Qingxian looked at Xian and his lips curled into a smile. You're very good at killing. Unfortunately, this is just the beginning. My Kuraki College has hundreds of thousands of people in Qingzhou, and there are also Dark World and countless aristocratic families. Xian, can you kill them all? At this point, his smile suddenly became somewhat sinister. Even if I'm tired, I'll tire you to death. Chapter 188. Tire himself to death? Xian smiled. In fact, he knew that the best outcome for him now was to sue for peace with Kuraki College and Dark World. As long as he took the initiative to sue for peace, there was still a possibility of reconciliation. However, he would not sue for peace. Not even if he died. Not even if he took the initiative to sue for peace. Even if Kuraki College and Dark World came to sue for peace, he would not agree. As old Ji was dead. He had never forgotten this old man. Back then, Kuraki College and Dark World joined hands to kill old Ji. As for old Ji, he could have left, but in order to protect Ji Anji and the other two, old Ji didn't take a single step back. He must take revenge for this. If he did not take revenge, he would not be a man. Moreover, he knew that there was no possibility of reconciliation. He would not believe Kuraki College and Dark World and Kuraki College would not believe him. As long as he gave these two forces a chance, they would give him a destructive blow. Not only against him but also against the people around him. Tire himself to death? Xian shook his head and smiled. Even if I tire myself to death, I will kill you before I die. After saying that, he pointed the spirit-elegant sword at Mu Qingxian in the distance. Your Kuraki College has many people? No problem, I will kill as many as they come. After saying that, he turned and walked towards the black flame horse not far away. Soon Xian disappeared from Mu Qingshuan's sight on the black flame horse. Mu Qingshuan stood in the same place and did not speak for a long time. He knew that Kuraki College had met a person who was not afraid of death and trouble. He also knew what Kuraki Academy would face if Xian arrived at the capital of the Great Cloud Empire before the reinforcements from the headquarters arrived. Disaster. Once Xian entered the Great Cloud Imperial capital, it would be a disaster for Kuraki College. Because at that time no one could stop Xian. Mu Qingshuan turned and left. Not long after Mu Qingshuan left, an armored woman with a long sword at her waist came outside the city. The woman glanced at the corpses on the ground. All of them were killed with a single sword strike. In the same place, the armored woman remained silent for a long time. Then she turned around and entered the city. She went directly to the city lord's mansion. An old man quickly came out to welcome her. This subordinate greets my lord. The armored woman glanced at the old man coldly. 1,000 cavalrymen and thousands of soldiers. Who gave you the order to send them out of the city to fight against Xian? Hearing this, the old man broke out in a cold sweat. The armored woman continued, You receive the salary of my Great Cloud Empire, but work as a dog for Kuraki Academy. With that, she turned around and left. Behind her, the old man's head had unknowingly fallen to the ground. In the city lord's mansion, the armored woman took out a book. She lightly scribbled on it. Another tumor has been removed. With that, she turned around and left. 2 hours later, dozens of people entered the city and retook control of Pingyang City. Xian was sitting by a river. The black flame horse was drinking water not far from him. Xian took off his clothes. There were many bloodstains on his body. All of them were from the previous injuries. Without the Dao Law, he didn't have the power of earth. It was impossible for him to come out unscathed in a battle with more than 1,000 cavalrymen. Xian swallowed a golden sore pill and began to wash his body with the river water. Soon, the river water in front of him was dyed red. A quarter of an hour later, Xian got up and was about to leave. At this moment, there was a sudden change. A person suddenly rushed out of the river in front of him. At the same time, a cold light pierced his throat. Xian's face was calm. When the cold light was about half an inch away from his throat, it abruptly stopped. Because a sword had pierced the forehead of the person in front of him. Blood seeped out from the bottom of the river. Xian opened his right palm and the sword flew into it. Xian turned around and left. On the river surface behind him, a corpse floated down along with the river. Assassinate him. Ever since he entered the Great Cloud Realm, Xian had kept one eye open even when he slept. Moreover, when he was washing his body just now, he had already anticipated what would happen if there was someone at the bottom of the river. Now, no matter where he went, he was prepared for the worst. If someone wanted to assassinate him, they had to be faster than his sword. Soon Xian disappeared not far away. After Xian left, an armored woman came to the riverside. The armored woman glanced at the corpse floating on the river. Killed with one sword. Clean and neat. After a moment of silence, the armored woman looked in the direction Xian left. Is he going to kill his way to the imperial capital? 2 hours later. At night, the sky darkened and the entire land was pitch black. Xian rode the black flame horse to a piece of flat land and lay on the black flame horse. Rest. He naturally had to rest. Without sleep, he would not be able to concentrate, which was even worse for him. Clearly, someone did not want him to rest. In the surrounding darkness, there was a sudden sound of fragmented footsteps. These footsteps were obviously made deliberately. But Xian did not move. About an hour later, those fragmented footsteps were getting closer and closer to Xian, but Xian still did not move. Therefore, those footsteps were getting closer. At this moment, a sword light flashed like a bolt of lightning in this dark night. A few dozen feet to the left of Xian, a bloody head suddenly fell to the ground. The sword flew back to Xian's side, while Xian was still sleeping soundly. On the other side, 2 people were staring at Xian on the horse in the distance. These 2 people were the mistress of the Dark World and Mu Qingshuan. The mistress of the Dark World shook her head. We are assassins of the Dark World. Even the Dao soldiers of the Divine Central Continent cannot do anything to him. Mu Qingxian was silent. The mistress of the dark world said, "If we can't stop this person with his current speed, I'm afraid it will not take half a month to reach the Great Cloud Imperial capital." Mu Qingxian turned to look at the mistress of the dark world. "Which city is the closest to this place?" The mistress of the dark world said in a deep voice, "Longyu City." Mu Qingxian nodded. "Let Longyu City be prepared. Even if we can't kill this person, we must delay him for a few hours." The mistress of the dark world shook her head. "This city is not under our control." Hearing this, Mu Qingxian frowned. "Then inform the Great Cloud Empire and let them pass the order." The mistress of the dark world said indifferently, "By the time that King Kaoshan gives the order, this Yi Xian will have already passed by Longyu City." Mu Qingshuan's frown deepened. After a moment he said again, "Has there been a bounty?" The mistress of the dark world glanced at Mu Qingxian. "Now in the Azure province, who dares to come and kill Yi Xian? Who dares? Who can?" Mu Qingshuan's face instantly darkened. At this moment he realized to what extent Yi Xian's influence had reached. The youngest sword master in the Azure province. Just this title alone was enough to deter everyone. If it wasn't for the hatred between Kuraki College and Yi Xian, no matter how high the reward was, Kuraki College wouldn't come and target Yi Xian. Even Kuraki College was like this, let alone others. Mu Qingxian raised his head and looked at Yi Xian, who was not far away. His eyes gradually became a little dazed. "No one can stop him?" Speaking until here, his dazed eyes suddenly became vicious. "Since we can't target him, then target the people around him. Target the state of Jiang, target Songlan Academy, target his sister. These people can't be as invincible as him, right?" Finishing, he looked at the mistress of the dark world. "Let the dark world assassins and the elites of Kuraki College take the cloud ship to the state of Jiang. For every step he takes, kill one person from the state of Jiang and Songlan Academy. Let's see if Yi Xian will return or not. Also, let the headquarters look for the whereabouts of his sister. Doesn't he care about his sister? If his sister falls into the hands of Kuraki College, let's see if Yi Xian can still be so arrogant." P.S. Qing Wan. Chapter 189. Mu Qingshuan's voice was very loud and he also used Xianqi. Not to mention Yi Xian, who was not far away. Everyone within a radius of 1 li could clearly hear his words. Obviously he deliberately said this to Yi Xian. Against the state of Jiang. Against Azure Waves Academy. This was Mu Qingshuan's current goal. Because he discovered that he could no longer target Yi Xian. Whether it was experts or assassins, they could no longer stop Yi Xian's advance. The only way now was to target the state of Jiang and Azure Waves Academy and force Yi Xian to return. In the dark night, Mu Qingxian looked coldly at Yi Xian, who was in the distance. But Yi Xian still didn't move and he even started snoring. Mu Qingxian did not say anything and turned to leave with the mistress of the dark world. An hour later, 5 cloud ships left the Great Cloud Imperial capital and headed for the state of Jiang. Inside these 5 cloud ships were the elites of Kuraki Academy and Dark World. On the black flame horse, Yi Xian sat up and took out the sound transmission stone. About a quarter of an hour later, Lu Jioga's voice came from the sound transmission stone. "Don't worry, if they come they will not be able to return." Yi Xian put away the sound transmission stone and continued to sleep. In fact, he was not worried because the current Azure Waves Academy was no longer the Azure Waves Academy of the past. If the elites of Kuraki Academy and Dark World went, they would not be able to gain any advantage. Unless the Dao soldiers of the headquarters went, the current Azure Waves Academy was not afraid of Kuraki Academy and Dark World. At daybreak, Yi Xian set off. His goal was still the Great Cloud Imperial capital. The news of Yi Xian entering the Great Cloud realm also spread at this moment, especially the matter of Yi Xian single-handedly annihilating 1,000 cavalries in Pingyang City. At first it was still one person single-handedly against 1,000, but later on, it became one person single-handedly against 10,000, and later on, it became one person single-handedly against 100,000. In short, at this moment, Yi Xian was undoubtedly the most dazzling person in the Azure Prefecture. And everyone knew that Yi Xian's targets were the Kuraki Academy and the Dark World, the 2 strongest forces in the Qingzhou region. At noon, Yi Xian arrived at an ancient city. Longshu City. On the city wall, a middle-aged man looked down at Yi Xian, who was entering the city, and said with a smile, This person is Yi Xian? A guard beside the middle-aged man nodded. It should be true. The middle-aged man smiled faintly, as expected of the youngest sword master of my Qingzhou. Such bearing and courage are rare in the younger generation of my Qingzhou. The guard said in a deep voice, City Lord, Kuraki Academy sent a message hoping that we can stop this person. Stop him? The middle-aged man's smile turned cold. You want to use the lives of my Long Stone City soldiers to stop me? Kuraki Academy sure has a good plan. The guard said in a deep voice, if we don't send troops to stop Yi Xian, I'm afraid Kuraki Academy will. The middle-aged man glanced at the guard beside him. Kuraki Academy? I only listen to King Kaoshan's orders. Pass down the order. No one in the city is allowed to stop Yi Xian. Anyone who disobeys will be killed without mercy. The guard bowed slightly. Understood. After saying this, he turned and left. On the city wall, the middle-aged man turned around. At this moment, Yi Xian had already entered the city. Watching Yi Xian slowly disappear at the end of the street, the middle-aged man did not speak for a long time. Inside the city. When Yi Xian was about to leave the city, at the city gate stood an old man wearing a gray robe. The old man's right hand was hidden in his sleeve, while his left hand held 2 black iron balls. 10,000 Laws Realm. In the corner, the people of Long Stone City frowned. This Kuraki Academy was going to send out 10,000 Laws Realm? Opposite Yi Xian, the old man in gray robe stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, old man, Kuraki Academy's teacher. This time I came to tell you that my Kuraki Academy and the elites of Dark World are about to enter Jiang country's territory. If you don't return, your Tsonglan Academy and the Jiang country's royal family will die without a burial place. Yi, this chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Xian expressionlessly rode the black flame horse and continued forward. Being ignored, the old man's face instantly sank. In his left palm, the 2 black iron balls made a cracking sound. He wanted to attack. He really wanted to attack. Because if he attacked, he was very confident that he could kill Yi Xian. After all, he was at 10,000 Laws Realm, while Yi Xian was only at Ethereal Opening Realm. Yi Xian and he were 2 whole realms apart. But the problem was he did not dare. Li Mu was a law-controlling realm expert, but he still died in such a dubious way. Gradually, the old man's left hand loosened. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. He turned to face the old man. Want to hit me? Come on then. Come on. The old man's loosened left hand clenched again. He turned to stare at Yi Xian, his whole face slightly distorted. Yi Xian suddenly jumped off the black flame horse. He directly walked in front of the old man, then pointed at himself. Come, hit me. In the corner, the Longshore City Lord's mouth slightly twitched. This Yi Xian. And in front of Yi Xian, the old man's hands were already slightly trembling. This was a sign that he was extremely angry. Seeing that the old man did not make a move, Yi Xian's mouth curled into a sneer. He also did not make a move. He turned around and mounted the black flame horse. He quickly disappeared not far away. In the same place, the old man suddenly fiercely slammed his palm on the ground. Bang! The entire ground instantly exploded, forming a huge crater. The old man's face was terrifyingly gloomy. This was the first time he was provoked by a Nether Passage realm ant like this, and he could not make a move. Aggrieved. He had never been so aggrieved before. At that moment he really wanted to make a move. But he still forcefully endured it. Because if he made a move he would just be throwing his life away. Moreover, the celebrity Yi Xian was deliberately provoking him. Even an expert like Li Mu could not fight back in front of that sword immortal, let alone him. After a moment the old man deeply sighed, turned around and left. Outside the city, Yi Xian rode the black flame horse forward. Actually, he had hoped that the old man would make a move because he wanted to see how far his current strength was from the Dharma realm. There was definitely a gap. Even though he was now a sword master holding a true level sword and sword sheath, he was very clear that there was still a gap between him and the Dharma realm. After all, he was currently only at the Nether Passage realm. And he wanted to know how big the gap was. He did not have a clear idea of his current strength. Few people under the Dharma realm could block his sword, but what about the Dharma realm? Simply put, he really wanted to fight with the Dharma realm. The reason why he did not take the initiative to make a move was because he did not want to waste time. His current goal was the Great Cloud Imperial Capital. After leaving the city, Yi Xian sped up. In the next 2 days Yi Xian did not encounter any trouble and everything went smoothly. Therefore he passed through 3 more cities, getting closer and closer to the Great Cloud Imperial capital. However, the cloud ships of Kuraki College and Dark World had also entered the territory of Jiang country. Outside the Jiang country's imperial capital, 3 cloud ships slowly descended and soon, nearly 100 people disembarked from the cloud ships, including more than 30 black-clothed people. These black-clothed people had just disembarked and were about to conceal themselves. Suddenly, more than 30 arrows shot over from an unknown place. Seeing this scene, the faces of the students of Kuraki College and the black-clothed people changed greatly, and they retreated rapidly. However, it was still a little too late and more than a dozen people were directly pierced by the arrows and fell to the ground. At the same time, more than 70 cavalrymen suddenly rushed out of the city. When they saw these 70 people, the faces of the students of Kuraki College changed greatly. Black Flame Cavalrymen. Because these 70 people were exactly the same as the legendary Black Flame Cavalrymen. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. Exactly the same. Black Flame Cavalrymen? The students of Kuraki College and the assassins of Dark World were dumbfounded. At this moment the 70 cavalrymen were getting closer and closer to them, and the momentum of their charge was simply earth-shattering. Some of the students of Kuraki College recovered from their shock and roared furiously, "Meet the enemy! Meet the enemy!" As soon as the voice resounded, the 70 cavalrymen had already charged over. In an instant miserable shrieks resounded in the battlefield. On the distant city wall, there were tens of thousands of soldiers waiting in formation. Presently, Songlong College's status in Jiang country was extremely high, and it was also respected by countless people. No one would agree to touch Songlong College. On the city wall, Lu Jioga sat in a wheelchair, and beside her were Mo Yuan and Feng Lan. All of them were overlooking the battlefield below. At this moment, more than half of the so-called elites of Kuraki College had died, crushing. The 70 cavalrymen had completely crushed the students of Kuraki College. On the city wall, Mo Yuan smiled faintly. These Dao soldiers are extremely effective. Lu Jioga chuckled lightly. Countless gold coins piled up. Speaking until here, she seemed to have thought of something and she suddenly raised her head to look at the sky above the cloud ship. There was an old man hovering there. This person was the elder of Kuraki College who led the team this time. Looking at the battlefield below, the old man clenched his fists, and his expression was extremely ugly. He had never expected that Songlong College actually had Black Flame Cavalrymen. Naturally, this wasn't the Black Flame Cavalrymen of Great Cloud Empire. Obviously, it was a new cavalry unit that Songlong College had established after obtaining that batch of cavalry equipment. And the combat strength of this cavalry unit was so terrifying. If this continued, all the students of Kuraki College below would be killed. Thinking of this, the old man slightly raised his right hand, and just when he was about to attack, a black-robed old man suddenly appeared in front of him. 5th floor master of Drunken Immortal Inn. 5th floor master looked at the old man without saying a word, but his aura had already locked onto the old man. The old man looked at 5th floor master. Your Drunken Immortal Inn is really going to... 5th floor master waved his hand. Don't talk too much. If you attack you will die here today. Hearing that, the old man's expression turned extremely ugly. At this moment, all the students of Kuraki College below were killed. As for the assassins of Dark World, they had already escaped because they couldn't attack at all. The defensive strength of the armor that these 70 people wore was too terrifying. At this moment, a Dao soldier of Songlong College suddenly took off his helmet, revealing a delicate and pretty face of a woman. Jian Chuchu. Looking at the corpses on the battlefield, Jian Chuchu said excitedly, "Clean up the battlefield." As she spoke, she pointed at the 3 cloud ships that had stopped in the distance with her umbrella sword. "Hurry up and occupy them. These are our, everyone, Great Cloud Realm." On this day Yi Xian arrived at another city. Just when he was about to enter the city, a man blocked his way. The man held a spear in his hand and judging from his age he seemed to be in his 20s. The man looked at Yi Xian with excitement in his eyes. Because as long as he held off Yi Xian for 2 hours he would get hundreds of millions of gold coins. 2 hours, hundreds of millions of gold coins. That was great news. The man was about to speak, but at this moment Xian suddenly disappeared. The man's expression changed drastically, and the spear in his hand was about to attack. But at this moment, a sword was already at his forehead. The man's body stiffened. Xian held the sword and pointed it forward lightly. "What do you want to say?" The man looked at Xian for a long time, and in the end his right hand that was holding the spear slowly loosened and he said softly, "I am just passing by." End of this chapter. Chapter 190. Just passing by. Xian was amused. Passing by? The guy in front of him was not passing by at all. He came to find trouble with him. However, Xian did not kill him. He sheathed his sword. Xian left on the black flame horse. Xian left. In the same place, cold sweat dripped down the spear-wielding man's forehead. He was at the peak of the divine fusion realm, one of the best among the younger generation in Qingzhou. However, just now he was shocked to find that he couldn't even fight back in front of Xian, let alone stall Xian for an hour. The gap in strength was too big. After a while, the man shook his head with a bitter smile, then turned and left. Great Cloud Imperial Capital, Kuraki Academy. In the main hall, all the higher-ups of Kuraki Academy were present. The atmosphere in the hall was solemn. The elites sent by Zhonglan Academy to the state of Jiang had been wiped out. This was not the main point. The main point was that Xian did not return, and Zhonglan Academy alone had wiped out the elites of Kuraki Academy. This meant that Zhonglan Academy had risen. Mu Qingxian sat in the main seat, his expression extremely cold. From the beginning to the present, Great Cloud Realm's Kuraki Academy had lost too much. Although not many 10,000 Lo Realm powerhouses had died, too many geniuses under 10,000 Lo Realm had died. It had hurt their foundation. It could be said that even if Xian stopped now, there would be a talent gap in the future of Kuraki Academy. After all, these young students were the future of Kuraki Academy. And now, 50 to 60% of these young students had died. If Xian arrived at the imperial capital, Xian would definitely kill his way to Kuraki Academy. No one wanted to see that scene. At this moment, someone suddenly asked, "With Xian's current speed, how long will it take for him to reach the imperial capital?" An old man said solemnly, "If no one stops him, he can reach the imperial capital in about 10 days. 10 days. All of them gazed at Mu Qingxian. Mu Qingxian said lightly, "If we can't stop him for 20 days when the reinforcements from the headquarters arrive, the younger generation of Kuraki Academy would have been slaughtered by him. Stop Xian for 20 days. The problem was, how could they stop Xian when the Dharma Realm powerhouse couldn't make a move? Mu Qingxian suddenly got up and left. Everyone in the hall looked at each other. After Mu Qingxian left Kuraki Academy, he went to the Imperial Palace of Great Cloud Empire. Unfortunately, he was stopped by a maid outside the palace gate. Mu Qingxian glanced into the depths of the palace. "Send a message requesting an audience with King Kaoshan." The maid bowed slightly. Reporting to Dean Mu, King Kaoshan is not in the palace. Mu Qingxian frowned. "Not in the palace? Where is it?" The maid shook her head. "This servant does not know." Mu Qingxian was silent for a long time. In the end, his expression gradually became sinister. "Xian, you forced this. Since you don't want to give up, then let's all perish together." With that, he turned around and left. Inside the palace, a woman was squatting on the ground. In front of her was a row of black ants. The woman counted them one by one. 1, 2, 3. At this moment, a maid walked to the woman's side. "Your Majesty, Dean Mu has left." The woman didn't reply and continued counting. The maid obediently retreated to the side and didn't dare to disturb her. After an unknown amount of time, the woman suddenly clapped her hands and said excitedly, 471. Speaking of this, she slightly frowned. "Why is there one more than last time? Did I count wrong? Let me count again." With that, she began to count again. This chapter is not finished. Please continue. At the side, the maid lowered her head and didn't dare to speak. At this moment, the woman suddenly looked up at the maid. "You said that Mu has left?" The maid hurriedly said. "Yes, Dean Mu has left." The woman nodded slightly. "It seems that this Mu has nowhere to go. Who knows what kind of sinister tricks he will use. There's also Dark World. These two shameless forces bullied Yi Xian with so many people. They are really heartless, inhumane and shameless. This king can't tolerate this. With that she turned to look at the maid and said angrily, "Go get this king's heavy azure dragon saber. This king wants to cut my nails." The maid. Another 3 days passed. Yi Xian was getting closer and closer to the great cloud imperial capital. At night the world was silent. There were no stars or moon. One couldn't even see their fingers in front of them. In a dense forest, Yi Xian was lying on a black flame horse, hugging his sword with both hands and sleeping soundly. But the black flame horse didn't sleep. It was still moving forward, but its speed was much slower. At this moment the black flame horse suddenly stopped. Not far in front of it stood an old man, a 10,000 laws realm expert. Yi Xian jumped off the horse and walked towards the old man. Soon he was in front of the old man. He knew this old man. It was the old man that he asked the other party to beat up in front of the city gate. When Yi Xian walked in front of the old man's aura suddenly dropped. Soon the old man's aura became weaker and weaker. Soon the old man's aura dropped to the divine combination realm. Lowering his realm, Yi Xian clenched the spirit elegant sword in his hand. The old man stared at Yi Xian. "Now I am not bullying the weak." With that he suddenly disappeared. The next moment, a palm was already above Yi Xian's head. When the palm fell, the ground under Yi Xian's feet instantly cracked. At the same time, a powerful palm force locked onto Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian felt as if he was being pressed by a mountain, unable to move. And at this moment, a powerful sword force accompanied by sword intent swept out from Yi Xian's body. Boom! The palm force that was suppressing Yi Xian was instantly broken. However, Yi Xian was directly sent flying dozens of feet away by the old man's palm. Yi Xian had just stopped when a shadow suddenly swept in front of him. Then, a fist with a powerful and overbearing force went straight for his face. Fast. Strong. Facing this punch, Yi Xian did not dodge. He held the sword with both hands and slashed down. Bang! Yi Xian was sent flying again. However, the moment he was sent flying, a sword light flashed across the field and went straight for the old man. The old man was expressionless. He lightly stomped his right foot and a stone shot out from the ground, directly hitting the flying sword. Bang! The sword light shattered and the flying sword flew back to Yi Xian. The old man lightly pressed his right foot against the ground while he strode forward with his left foot. He instantly seemed like an extremely hungry cheetah hunting its prey, and he instantly charged forward at an unparalleled speed. At the moment the old man charged forward, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. A strand of sword light suddenly appeared in the dark night. The old man didn't retreat but advanced instead. He sped up and punched out. Bang! The sword light shattered and was blasted flying. Moreover, the old man had retreated to the spot. The sword that was blasted flying spun a few times in midair before it finally landed firmly in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian opened his palm and the sword fell into his hand. He held it in his hand as he walked slowly towards the old man, and there was a wisp of an excited smile on the corners of his mouth. This time he'd finally met his match. "I can practice." On the other hand, the old man's expression was extremely solemn as he stood in front of Yi Xian. This chapter isn't finished. Please continue to the next page. Yi Xian's battle strength was much stronger than he had imagined. Although he had suppressed his cultivation to the divine union realm, his battle awareness and some special techniques were still present. However, the moment they clashed, he discovered that Yi Xian's strength had already reached such a level that they were actually evenly matched. And Yi Xian was only at the Nether Passage realm. If he reached the divine union realm, thinking of this, the old man's expression darkened. The old man slowly clenched his fists as the ground beneath his feet trembled slightly. On the other hand, the sword force on Yi Xian's body also grew stronger and stronger at this moment. Gathering force. Gathering force with the sword. This was unique to the sword master. The old man squinted his eyes and clenched his fists even tighter. At the same time, a violent aura surged out from his body. The ground beneath his feet could no longer withstand the power he released and started to crack. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared from the spot and a sword light slashed towards the old man. This sword was like a blazing sun that instantly lit up the surroundings as if it was daytime. One sword to decide life and death. He had not used this sword for a very long time because after he became a sword master, there was no longer anyone who was qualified for him to use this sword. The moment Yi Xian used his sword, the old man suddenly charged out and punched towards Yi Xian's sword with both fists. There were two dazzling balls of fist light on his fists. Wherever they passed, the air would instantly shatter. Not only that, but the powerful fist force also caused the ground within 100 zhang around the two of them to crack layer by layer. The sword and the fists were getting closer and closer. There was a moment of silence. Boom. An earth-shattering explosion suddenly rang out in the dark night. As the explosion resounded, the two figures retreated rapidly. While Yi Xian was retreating, the sword case on his back suddenly trembled violently. Then 7 swords suddenly flew out and streaked across the field like 7 bolts of lightning. Opposite Yi Xian, the old man's pupils suddenly constricted. At this moment he could no longer care about anything else and immediately stopped suppressing his cultivation. Boom. Without any warning, the 7 swords were sent flying. Dharma realm. At this moment the old man had already recovered his cultivation. After recovering his cultivation he easily blocked Yi Xian's 7 flying swords. If he hadn't recovered to the Dharma realm, the 7 swords would have been enough to kill him. The old man stared at Yi Xian in the distance. Blood was still flowing from the corner of his mouth, and his right hand had been cut open by a sword. At this moment he had to admit that he couldn't defeat Yi Xian by suppressing his cultivation. However, he could injure Yi Xian. At this moment Yi Xian had already suffered serious injuries. Blood was continuously flowing from the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. Not only that, but his entire face was sickly pale. It was obvious that he had suffered serious internal injuries. The old man suddenly grinned hideously. Yi Xian, you can't hold on any longer? The show has just begun. As soon as he finished speaking, a middle-aged man appeared beside him. Dharma realm. The middle-aged man's aura suddenly began to drop. In an instant, the middle-aged man's cultivation was forcefully suppressed to the divine combination realm. The middle-aged man stared straight at Yi Xian. Come, continue. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged straight at Yi Xian. However, he soon stopped. This was because there were 12 golden men in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian faced the middle-aged man. Come, continue. P.S. I've been writing books for 4 to 5 years and I've never stopped writing. Recently, due to some family matters, I've barely been able to make it through 2 chapters. I feel guilty, but there's nothing I can do. Please forgive me. If you can't forgive me, you can scold me, but please don't insult my family. Thank you very much. Once the matter is settled, I'll return to 3 chapters. Everyone, I'm sorry for this period of time. Clasped fist, end of this chapter. Chapter 191. The middle-aged man stared at Yi Xian and didn't dare to make a move. Because he knew how terrifying the 12 golden men were. If he didn't lower his cultivation, he naturally wouldn't be afraid. But the problem was that he had lowered his cultivation, and the 12 golden men were all peak Divine Union Realm experts. Moreover, they were monstrous Divine Union Realm experts. 1 against 1 or even 1 against 3 he wouldn't have a problem. But 1 against 12? That was impossible. Not to mention that there was still Yi Xian nearby. Yi Xian's flying sword was still a huge threat to him. But he naturally wasn't willing to stop now. Because Yi Xian was clearly injured, it was a good opportunity to kill him. If he missed this opportunity and allowed Yi Xian to recover, it would be very troublesome. The middle-aged man pondered for a moment before saying, "Come out." As the middle-aged man's voice fell, another 2 myriad lower realm experts appeared on the scene. However, the 2 of them quickly suppressed their cultivation to the Divine Unity realm. 3 peak Divine Union realm experts. Or rather, pseudo-Dharma realm experts. This time, Kuraki College only sent 4 of them, which was already a lot. Because Kuraki College only had a total of 9 Dharma realm experts, they sent 4 of them, which was quite a lot. The reason why they didn't send all of them was because they didn't dare to bet everything on one throw. Moreover, they had to be on guard against other forces. The middle-aged man glanced at the 12 golden men with grave and fearful eyes. Because the 12 golden men were really strong and they were even a threat to him now. But at this moment he didn't want to let go of this opportunity to injure Yi Xian. After pondering for a moment, the middle-aged man said, "The 2 of you hold back the 12 golden men. I will deal with Yi Xian." As soon as he finished speaking, the two people beside him charged out. As the middle-aged man was about to make a move, the two who charged out first were instantly pushed back tens of meters. The middle-aged man was stunned. Instant defeat? Zhou Xian grinned. Come on, let's continue. The middle-aged man clenched his right hand tightly. Not far from him, the old man who was almost killed by Zhou Xian suddenly said, I underestimated him. Go back and think about it. The middle-aged man stared fixedly at Zhou Xian for a short moment before he said, Retreat. After saying that, the three of them returned to their original states and turned to leave. Lowering one's realm. Zhou Xian collected the 12 statues. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. The golden man frowned deeply. He hadn't expected Kuraki Gakuen to play such a trick. The 10,000 Laws realm would lower their realm, and when they couldn't win they would immediately restore their realm. This was simply cheating. If he wanted to kill his opponent, he had to be fast enough to kill him before his opponent could recover his cultivation level. Otherwise, once these people recovered to the Dharma realm, his sword would not be able to kill them. He also found that there was indeed a big gap between him and the Dharma realm. This gap couldn't be made up even with equipment. Zhou Xian collected the 12 golden statues in front of him. In that instant just now, he directly consumed over 500,000 top-grade spirit stones. Fortunately, he'd stopped in time, otherwise he would have consumed at least 1 million top-grade spirit stones. Even though the 12 golden statues were strong enough, they were truly too expensive. Every time he used them, his heart ached. He was still poor. Zhou Xian sighed deeply. Even though he had over 1 billion gold coins and 2 million top-grade spirit stones on him now, he was actually very poor. Because he still owed the Immortal Indulgence House a lot of top-grade spirit stones. Moreover, every time he used the golden statues he would be poor again. Make money. Work hard to make money. Zhou Xian took a deep breath and then he took out a golden sour pill and consumed it. After that, he leaped onto the black flame horse and disappeared into the boundless night. In the night, Zhou Xian's expression was slightly gloomy as he rode the black flame horse. Because he'd noticed that no matter where he went, Kuraki Gakuen was able to accurately locate him. In other words, his whereabouts had always been in the grasp of Kuraki Gakuen. If this continued, he would only be in a passive position. After a moment of silence, Zhou Xian suddenly sped up. The black flame horse looked very cool when it galloped in the dark because the ground behind it would burn with black flames. Fortunately, the flames didn't spread and only burned for a while before vanishing. 2 hours later, when the sky was turning bright, Zhou Xian entered an ancient city called Mirror City. After entering the city, Zhou Xian didn't immediately leave the city for the Great Cloud Empire. Instead, he went to the Immortal Indulgence House. The person who received him was the 6th floor master of the Immortal Indulgence House. In the room, the 6th floor master was silent for a long time, and then he said, It'll be difficult for you to get rid of Kuraki Gakuen's surveillance. Zhou Xian asked, Why? The 6th floor master said in a deep voice, If I'm not wrong, it should be Dharma realm experts from Kuraki Gakuen or Dark World who are monitoring you. To be precise, it should be Dark World. Only Dharma realm experts from Dark World can follow you without anyone noticing. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. Tracking you, little friend. Zhou Xian asked again, Is there a way to get rid of them? The 6th floor master smiled bitterly. This kind of experts, especially the assassins from Dark World, are good at concealment and speed. If you want to kill them, it'll be very difficult unless it's a law-controlling realm expert. Zhou Xian thought for a while and then he said, How about this? I don't need to get rid of them. I just need to stop them. After that, I'll change my appearance and go to the Great Cloud Empire. The 6th floor master glanced at Zhou Xian. Forgive me for being straightforward, little friend. Even if you go to the Great Cloud Empire, I'm afraid you won't be able to do anything. You'll even make the matter worse. Not only that, you might be in danger. In his opinion, what Zhou Xian did was a bit unwise. Challenging the entire Dark World and Kuraki Gakuen alone? That was impossible. Zhou Xian smiled. Even if I don't go to the Great Cloud Empire, will they stop targeting me? The 6th floor master fell silent. Zhou Xian said again, They won't. They will target me again and again. Not only will they target me, they will also attack the people around me. Instead of waiting for them to be born, I might as well take the initiative to attack. Even if I can't kill them, it'll be good to scare them. Otherwise, I'll just passively wait to be beaten. It'll be really frustrating. The sixth floor master looked at Zhou Xian with a complicated gaze. This is a typical werewolf. Even if I die, I'll bite off a piece of flesh from you. The Kuraki Gakuin and Dark World are really unlucky to provoke this guy. The sixth floor master thought for a moment, then said, how about this? I'll send someone. No, I'll personally go and stop the assassins from the Dark World that are following you. However, whether or not you can avoid their pursuit will depend on you. Zhou Xian nodded. Okay. The sixth floor master was about to speak, but at this time, a middle-aged man suddenly rushed into the room. The middle-aged man glanced at Zhou Xian and the sixth floor master, and said in a deep voice, they've surrounded the outside. The sixth floor master frowned. Kuraki Gakuin? The middle-aged man nodded. Mu Qingxian wants us to hand over State Scholar Yi, otherwise. At this time Zhou Xian suddenly said, what's there to be afraid of? Just one word, kill them. After saying that, he picked up the sword on the table and walked out. The middle-aged man and the sixth floor master were stunned. But soon Zhou Xian walked back. He sat back and put the sword on the table. After a short silence, he faced the sixth floor master and the middle-aged man. Is there a back door to escape? Sixth floor master, the middle-aged man. End of this chapter. Chapter 192. Inside the room, the sixth floor master glanced at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man smiled bitterly. It's the Great Cloud Empire's Black Flame Cavalrymen. There are more than 50 of them. Apart from that, there are some obscure auras in the dark. They should be assassins from the Dark World. 50 Black Flame Cavalrymen. The sixth floor master's expression turned grave. In Qingzhou, the Black Flame Cavalrymen were invincible below the Dharma realm. Not to mention Qingzhou, even in the Divine Central Continent, the Black Flame Cavalrymen weren't weak. At the very least, they weren't weaker than the Dao soldiers of Drunken Immortal Inn and Kuraki College. 50. Now he knew why Zhou Xian had retreated. Even with Zhou Xian's strength, it would be difficult for him to fight against 50 of them. These Black Flame Cavalrymen weren't like ordinary cavalrymen. They were all elites. Whether it was their personal strength or the equipment they wore, they were all top-notch. Their battle prowess wasn't something ordinary cavalrymen could compare to. If Zhou Xian fought with these cavalrymen, he would definitely be delayed or even killed. What should we do now? The middle-aged man asked suddenly. The sixth floor master looked at Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian shrugged. Run. The middle-aged man and the sixth floor master's expression turned strange. Zhou Xian was puzzled. Can't we run? The sixth floor master smiled bitterly. Of course we can. But, shouldn't you be fighting? In his impression, Zhou Xian was a very tough person. Zhou Xian shook his head. They are fighting 50 against 1. Am I stupid? Actually, he wasn't afraid of the Black Flame Cavalrymen. The main problem was those Dharma Realm old monsters from Kuraki College. If they were mixed in with the Black Flame Cavalrymen, or rather they were definitely mixed in. She wasn't afraid of them. Most importantly, why should he fight to the death with these people? If he could win, he would fight. If he couldn't, he should run. The sixth floor master stood up. Little friend, my Drunken Immortal Inn has 6 tunnels that lead to various places outside the city. Follow me. Wait. At this moment, Zhou Xian suddenly stood up. Give me a moment. With that, he picked up the Lingxiu sword and walked towards the door. The middle-aged man and the sixth floor master looked at each other in confusion. Outside the Drunken Immortal Inn, Zhou Xian walked to the entrance with his sword in hand. Not far from him stood rows of Black Flame Cavalrymen, a total of 50 of them. These Black Flame Cavalrymen were organized as one, and their bodies emitted a sharp killing intent. In all fairness, the Black Flame Cavalry was indeed very strong. If they were to fight on the battlefield, he might not be able to defeat the 50 people in front of him. These people were much stronger than some of the geniuses on the Azure Province martial rankings. After Zhou Xian came out, the 50 cavalrymen's gazes instantly fell on him. Zhou Xian suddenly pointed his spirit-elegant sword at the 50 Black Flame Cavalrymen. I'll fight you to the death at daybreak. With that, he turned around and walked into the Drunken Immortal Inn. Outside the building, in the darkness somewhere beside Mu Qingxian, the mistress of the darkness said in a deep voice, Daybreak. Mu Qingxian said indifferently, In the Dark World assassins have the advantage and he is at a disadvantage. He naturally isn't willing to fight with us in the dark. If he wants daybreak, then we'll wait for daybreak. It suits me perfectly. Delay. Their objective was actually to delay. Because they were very clear that even if there were 50 Black Flame cavalrymen, it would be hard to kill Zhou Xian. One had to know that Zhou Xian still had the existence of 12 golden men. Hence their thinking was very simple. Delay Zhou Xian and wait for reinforcements to arrive. The Mistress of the Darkness thought about it and nodded. That's true. Just like this, the group of people waited and waited. Roughly 4 hours later, the sky finally brightened. Everyone looked towards the entrance of the drunken Immortal Inn. The 50 cavalrymen were waiting in formation, and all of them had vigilant expressions. Because they knew who they were going to deal with. Swordmaster. The youngest swordmaster in the Azure province. Furthermore, Zhou Xian still had 12 golden men that were comparable to peak Divine Fusion Realm experts. They didn't dare to be careless. The 50 Black Flame cavalrymen stared fixedly at the entrance of the drunken Immortal Inn. As long as that man appeared, they would immediately launch an attack. 1 breath passed. 10 breaths passed. Half an hour passed. A quarter of an hour passed. At the entrance of the drunken Immortal Inn, that man still did not come out. In the corner, Mu Qingxian frowned deeply. Another quarter of an hour passed and still no one came out. And Mu Qingshuan's expression was already gloomy. A quarter of an hour later, an old man appeared at the entrance of the drunken Immortal Inn. 6th floor master. 6th floor master stretched his waist, then looked at Mu Qingxian in the corner and smiled. Dean Mu, good morning. Mu Qingxian suddenly appeared in front of 6th floor master. He stared fixedly at 6th floor master. Where is he? Person. 6th floor master had a blank expression. Who? Mu Qingxian was practically roaring. Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian? 6th floor master was astonished. You don't know? He has already left. Boom. A powerful aura suddenly surged out from Mu Qingshuan's body. 6th floor master's figure trembled and he directly retreated over 10 feet. The ground within 10 feet of Mu Qingxian had already turned into a deep pit. Mu Qingxian clenched his fists and his expression was somewhat distorted. Gone. He never thought that Zhou Xian would actually escape. What about the fight to the death at daybreak? Was this still a swordsman? A swordsman who was so afraid of death? A swordsman who went back on his words? Too shameless. Too untrustworthy. Mu Qingxian was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. In the distance, 6th floor master smiled. Dean Mu, don't be angry. State Scholar Yi has some words for you. He said that he is not feeling well today, so he decided to fight another day. And he has already chosen the location. It is your Kuraki Academy. Quickly go back and wait for him. With that, he turned and left. In the same place, although Mu Qingshuan's fists were still clenched, he had already calmed down. At this moment, Mistress of the Dark World appeared beside Mu Qingxian. 4 hours. I'm afraid he has already reached Sui Yinqing. Sui Yinqing. Mu Qingshuan's eyes narrowed. This Sui Yinqing was very close to the Great Cloud Imperial capital. As long as he passed through Sui Yinqing and 2 more small cities, he could reach the Great Cloud Imperial capital in a day's journey. Once Zhou Xian entered the Great Cloud Imperial capital and went to Kuraki Academy, Mu Qingxian did not dare to think about it. With Zhou Xian's personality, once he entered the Great Cloud Imperial capital, he would absolutely do anything. Mu Qingxian suddenly looked up. Chase after him. We must stop him and buy time for the reinforcements of the Divine Central Continent. Mistress of the Dark World nodded, turned and left. Mu Qingxian looked up at the drunken Immortal Inn not far away and said fiercely, Drunken Immortal Inn, you will regret helping him like this. With that he turned and left. In the pavilion, 6th floor master chuckled. Regret? The one who regrets the most should be your Kuraki Academy. After a dozen breaths, 50 Black Flame cavalrymen left the city, leaving a trail of dust behind them. Chase after Zhou Xian. On a plain, Zhou Xian was riding the Black Flame horse, galloping madly all the way. Behind him was a long trail of black flames. On the horseback, Zhou Xian pondered. With his current speed, if nothing unexpected happened, he could reach the Great Cloud Imperial capital in 6 or 7 days at most. Once he reached the Great Cloud Imperial capital, The battlefield would be at Kuraki Academy. At this moment Xian suddenly looked up. In front of him, 3 black arrows were shooting toward him at lightning speed. When he raised his head, they were already in front of him. Xian suddenly opened his eyes. 2 wisps of sword light shot out from Xian's eyes. Boom. In front of Xian, the arrows directly shattered. At this moment, a spear pierced through the air from a distance. The spear tore through the air, producing a sharp and ear-piercing sound. Xian opened his palm, and the exquisite spirit sword flew out with a whoosh. In the blink of an eye, the exquisite spirit sword stabbed the tip of the spear. It was a tit for tat. Bang! The spear trembled violently and flew back. A few dozen feet away, a hand held the spear tightly. It was a woman with a head full of dirty whips. The woman's face was painted with colorful stripes and she wore a big nose ring. Her clothes were also extremely revealing. She only wore a beast-skin tube top and a beast-skin short skirt. On the woman's left and right were 5 men. 3 of them carried big bows on their backs, while the other 2 held spears in their hands. All 5 of them had fierce expressions. In front of the 5 men, the woman sized up Xian, then turned to look at the men beside her. She smiled and said, "Qingzhou's #1 genius? He's not that great." As she spoke, she looked at Xian, who was not far away. "My beast wolf mercenary group wants your head." At this moment Xian suddenly disappeared from the black flame horse. At the same time, a wisp of sword light quietly appeared in front of the woman. The woman's pupils suddenly shrank. At this moment her eyes were filled with fear. She sensed lethal danger from this attack. Because when it arrived in front of her, her first thought was that she wouldn't be able to resist it. This attack would kill her. However, she clearly didn't want to just wait for death to come. She stomped her left foot on the ground, and a powerful aura instantly swept through her. At the same time she stabbed the spear forward. This attack caused her entire face to warp. It was a stab with her full strength, because she knew that she would definitely die if she couldn't resist this attack from Xian. The spear stabbed forward while the sword arrived. Crack! The clear and melodious sound of metal breaking resounded, and then a ray of light pierced through the center of her forehead. The woman's figure stiffened on the spot, and Xian was standing in front of her. She gazed at Xian. "All right. Quickly." As soon as she finished speaking, the center of her forehead suddenly split open, and then blood sprayed out from it while she fell to the ground. On the other hand, the 5 men by the woman's side were completely stunned. An instant kill. She was killed just like that. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Meanwhile, 7 swords suddenly flew out from the sword box on Xian's back. Hiss. The other 5 were killed before they could even react. Xian cleaned up the battlefield and his gains weren't small. There were around 400 million gold coins, and there were actually over 1 million supreme-grade spirit stones. 1 million. Xian was slightly excited. What he lacked the most right now were supreme-grade spirit stones. Because only with supreme-grade spirit stones could he utilize the 12 golden colossi. What timely help. Xian bowed slightly to the corpses and said sincerely, "Good people, all good people." Hehe. At this moment, a low chuckle sounded out from behind Xian. It was very close, about a dozen steps away. Xian held the spirit elegance sword in his right hand, and his expression was solemn because he actually didn't notice that the person had arrived behind him. Who was it? P.S. It's been 2 chapters lately, but no one is scolding me. There are still many people voting, leaving messages and comforting me. Thank you all for your support. Many people want me to stop updating. Actually, what I want to say is, to my dad, I'm his son and I have the responsibility to be filial. To the readers, I'm an author and I have the same responsibility. The responsibility to write well and the responsibility to update. Moreover, I'm the only one in the family with an income. I don't write, so I don't have any income. Life isn't easy, but I still have to live on with a smile and work hard with everyone. Genius. 1 second to remember this website address. Mobile version. Chapter 193. Xian turned around. Not far in front of him stood a little girl. She was about 16 or 17 years old and wore a light green dress. She was smiling at him faintly. She walked slowly towards Yi Xian with a mischievous look on her face. Her eyes were lively and she looked very cute. In her right hand was a mace. It was not big and was about the size of her arm. When he saw the mace, Yi Xian's expression changed again. It was a true great spirit weapon. A true great spirit weapon. Who was this little girl? When the little girl was only 5 or 6 steps away from Yi Xian's expression changed suddenly. He tapped the tip of his foot lightly and his entire body floated back a distance of 30 meters, distancing himself from the little girl. The little girl was stunned for a moment before she grinned. Don't be afraid. It won't hurt. I guarantee that your head will explode with one hammer. There won't be any pain before you die. When she finished speaking, she appeared in front of Yi Xian again. However, Yi Xian retreated another 30 meters. The little girl frowned. Come here. Let me hammer you to death. Yi Xian asked, why do you want to hammer me to death? The little girl giggled. If I beat you to death, there will be a lot of money. When she finished speaking, she threw the mace at Yi Xian. In the distance, the moment the little girl attacked, Yi Xian took a step forward and stabbed with his sword. Bang! Yi Xian retreated more than 200 feet in an instant. In front of him was a ravine that was more than 200 feet long. It was created by his feet. Yi Xian looked down at his right hand. At this moment his entire right arm was trembling violently. Not only that, but the spirit elegant sword in his hand was also trembling. There were even cracks at the tip of the sword. So powerful. Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the little girl not far away. The little girl sized him up with a hint of surprise in her eyes. A little swordsman, you're not bad. You didn't die after taking a hit from me, little goblin Tuoba. As she spoke, she gave Yi Xian a thumbs up. Not bad. You're 1/10 as good as I am. You're worthy of praise. Yi Xian's face darkened. Damn it, are you praising me or praising yourself? Meanwhile, the little demoness called Taba was about to attack once more when Yi Xian hurriedly said, wait. The little girl stopped. She blinked and swung the hammer in her hand. What are you doing? Yi Xian said seriously, I can't beat you. The little girl said matter-of-factly, you can't beat me in the first place. Is there a problem? Yi Xian was speechless. The little girl swung the hammer in her hand and was about to attack again when Yi Xian hurriedly said, I have a problem, a big problem. The little girl frowned. Why do you have so many problems? Isn't it just death? What's there to be afraid of? It's just a hammer strike. Yi Xian was speechless. You're not the one who's going to die. Seeing that the little girl was a little impatient, Yi Xian walked in front of her. He flicked his finger and a gold card appeared in front of the little girl. The little girl sized up the gold card. Soon her eyes lit up. There were 500 million gold coins in the gold card. 500 million gold coins. The little girl grabbed it in her hand. Then she looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Is this for me? Yi Xian nodded and said seriously, I was deeply attracted to you from the first time I saw you. The little girl blinked. Why? Yi Xian said seriously, outstanding. You're like a firefly in the night. Even the night can't block your light. A straightforward person doesn't beat around the bush. I, Yi Xian, want to be friends with you. I like to be friends with outstanding people. The little girl sized up Yi Xian with eyes full of admiration. It was a look of admiration. You have a good eye. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. I don't have eyes. At this moment the little girl waved the gold card in her hand. 500 million gold coins. You're giving it to me just like that? Yi Xian said seriously, it's too vulgar to talk about money between friends. Since you've come from the Central Divine Prefecture, you must be in urgent need of money. Take this money for emergencies. If it's not enough, come find me. I'll gather it for you even if I have to sell my blood. The little girl was about to speak when a group of black flame cavalrymen rushed over from behind her. Yi Xian's face sank. He hadn't expected the black flame cavalrymen to arrive so quickly. The little girl turned to look at the black flame cavalrymen. Who are they? Yi Xian pulled the little girl behind him and said solemnly, they're the cavalrymen that Kuraki Academy invited. In any case, you go first. I'll bring up the rear. Don't worry about me. Really, I can hold on. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his sword and charged towards the cavalrymen. Behind him, the little girl was slightly stunned. In the distance, Yi Xian charged towards the black flame cavalryman with his sword in hand. The aura of his sword grew stronger and stronger. Gradually, the ground beneath his feet cracked open with every step he took. Xian and the Black Flame cavalryman drew closer and closer. When he was 3 m away from them, he suddenly leaped up and slashed down with his sword in both hands. A bright ray of sword light flashed down. Bang! The leader of the Black Flame cavalryman was sent flying over 100 meters away. When he crashed to the ground, he didn't stand up again. However, Xian was also sent flying. Not only that, there was a bloody hole on his left shoulder. Xian landed in front of the little girl. Looking at Xian on the ground, the little girl pulled Xian out of kindness. "Are you all right?" Xian rubbed his chest and shook his head. "I'm fine." As he spoke, he raised his sword and charged towards the Black Flame cavalryman again. He roared angrily, "Come at me if you can. Don't hurt that little girl." Hearing Xian's words, the little girl looked at the gold card in her hand and sighed softly. "Too outstanding. Dad, you must have saved the Azure Firmament world in your past life. Otherwise, how could you have given birth to such an outstanding daughter like me?" Bang! At this moment, Xian suddenly landed in front of the little girl. Xian spat out a mouthful of blood and stood up. At this moment, the Black Flame cavalryman charged over and surrounded him and the little girl. Xian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He was expressionless. The little girl sized up the Black Flame cavalryman curiously. At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in the sky above the Black Flame cavalryman. This person was Xian. Xian looked at Xian. His eyes were filled with wariness and doubt. This was because he was clear about Xian's strength. Even if he couldn't defeat these Black Flame cavalrymen, it was impossible for him to be suppressed like this. There's a trap. Now he had figured out Xian's character. This was definitely a despicable, shameless, and sinister person. There must be a trap. Soon, Xian's gaze landed on the little girl beside Xian. The little girl looked at Xian. "So many of you against one person. Not kind at all." Xian said coldly, "It's none of your business." The little girl was stunned. Then she looked at Xian. "He scolded me." Xian nodded. "I heard him." The little girl glared at Xian. "Damn you." Saying this, she looked at Xian. "How should I scold him?" Xian said, "Chest." The little girl blinked and looked at Xian. "Damn your chest." Xian suddenly said, "Kill him." The Black Flame cavalrymen were about to attack. At this moment, the little girl suddenly raised her hammer and rushed out. Before anyone could react, a Black Flame cavalryman not far from Xian was sent flying. In the air, the armor of the Black Flame cavalryman started to crack. The corner of Xian's mouth could not help but twitch at the sight of that. God, that was a clear-grade equipment. It was shattered with one hammer? Xian was also stunned. What the hell? The little girl did not stop. She turned her hand and smashed down with her hammer again. Bang. Beside her, a Black Flame cavalryman's spear was instantly shattered. Then the Black Flame cavalryman was sent flying. Instant kill. The little girl still wanted to attack. At this moment, Xian suddenly pulled her arm. "Don't use too much strength. Those armors and weapons are worth tens of millions of gold coins." The little girl's eyes lit up. "Tens of millions?" Xian nodded. "They are all treasures." The little girl turned to look at the Black Flame cavalrymen. At this moment, the Black Flame cavalrymen were already rushing over. The little girl suddenly smashed her hammer on the ground. Bang! The ground in an area of 300 m shook violently, and then the 10+ Black Flame cavalrymen in front of them were blasted flying by a powerful force. At the same time, this force forcefully stopped the remaining Black Flame cavalrymen. Besides the cavalrymen that were sent flying, the rest of the cavalrymen stopped. The ground within 100 zhang had completely cracked. Xian wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. This little girl was too strong. She was definitely in the top 10 of the monstrous genius list. In the air, Xian was stunned. He looked at the little girl. "You, who exactly are you?" The little girl looked up at Xian. She gently moved her bangs away from her forehead. "Little demon Tuoba, my father said that I was born to save the world." Xian. Xian walked to little demon Tuoba's side. He pulled little demon Tuoba's sleeve. "Be careful. He is an expert at the peak of the 10,000 laws realm." Little demon Tuoba waved her small hand. My father can kill 100 people like him with one slap. Of course, I am not someone who relies on my father. As she spoke, she looked at Mu Qingxian. My uncle can also kill 100 people like you with one slap. If you want to make a move, I will call my uncle. Yixian was speechless. You don't rely on your father. Is there any difference between calling your uncle or your father? In the air, Mu Qingshuan's expression was extremely ugly. There was no doubt that this little girl came from the divine central continent. Because in Azure province there was no one so terrifying. Moreover, from the little girl's words, it was clear that her background was not simple. Mu Qingxian pondered for a moment. His expression softened. Little girl, I have offended you before. Please forgive me. My Kuraki Academy has no intention of becoming enemies with your excellency. Yixian suddenly pulled little demon Tuoba's sleeve. Make him pay for the psychological damage. Little demon Tuoba blinked. Then she looked at Mu Qingxian. Pay. As she spoke, she looked at Yixian. How much? Yixian said seriously, you are so outstanding, but he actually scolded you just now. This cannot be tolerated. Absolutely cannot be tolerated. Make him pay 2 billion. Otherwise call your uncle here. And call your father here too. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 194. Yixian. Mu Qingxian stared at Yixian. If looks could kill, Yixian would have died a long time ago. Yixian ignored Mu Qingxian and faced little demon Tuoba. Did your father scold you? Little demon Tuoba shook her head. Yixian asked again, did your uncle scold you? Little demon Tuoba shook her head again. Yixian suddenly pointed at Mu Qingxian and said angrily, then what right does he have to scold you? Hearing this, little demon Tuoba clenched her left hand. She looked up at Mu Qingxian and said angrily, what right do you have to scold me? Yixian quickly echoed and pointed at Mu Qingxian angrily, what right do you have to scold such an outstanding person? Hearing Yixian's words, little demon Tuoba became even angrier. Her chest heaved up and down, and the hammer in her hand trembled violently. Yixian wanted to say something, but little demon Tuoba suddenly cried. Yixian swallowed the words he was about to say. What was going on? Mu Qingxian was also stunned in the air. Little demon Tuoba wiped her tears and said with incomparable grievance, my uncle, my father, my brother, and my third uncle have never scolded me. What right does he have to scold me? Why? Yixian suddenly felt a sense of guilt. This little girl, she really felt wronged. At this moment, little demon Tuoba suddenly looked at Mu Qingxian and said angrily, 20 billion. Compensate me 20 billion, otherwise I will ask my uncle to beat you to death. With that, she took out a sound transmission stone. Mu Qingxian clenched his fists tightly and his expression was gloomy. Threat. This was a blatant threat. 20 billion? Even if he sold Kuraki Academy, he wouldn't have that much. Even if he did, he wouldn't pay. Mu Qingxian glanced at Yixian. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure trembled and he disappeared. The surviving Black Flame cavalryman wanted to leave as well. However, Yixian suddenly said, don't let them leave. Kill them. After saying that, he directly rushed out. Little demon Tuoba also rushed out with Yixian in hand. However, she wasn't chasing after the Black Flame cavalry but Mu Qingxian. Yixian hurriedly pulled her back. That's the peak of the 10,000 Dharma realm. We can't beat it for now, but we can beat it first. As he spoke, he pointed at the group of Black Flame cavalrymen in the distance. Go easy on them, they're all money. Little demon Tuoba nodded instinctively. Then he was pulled by Yixian and rushed over. It would be a bit difficult for Yixian to defeat 50 Black Flame cavalrymen alone, but with the little demon Empress Tuoba, it wouldn't be difficult at all. At this moment, Yixian didn't hold back any longer because these Black Flame cavalrymen weren't simple, and the slightest mistake could result in their defeat. About an hour later, Yixian and little demon Tuoba stopped. The two of them sat on the ground and behind them was a ground full of corpses. They were all Black Flame cavalrymen. They chased them all the way, and after chasing them for nearly 50 kilometers, they finally killed more than 40 Black Flame cavalrymen. The two of them sat on the ground and little demon Tuoba leaned against Yixian. She used her hammer to point at the nearby black flame cavalrymen and asked curiously, "How much are they worth?" Xian thought for a moment and then said, "A lot. 40 sets of equipment. Most of them were clear rank equipment and it could be said to be a huge profit. The only pity was the black flame horses. After the cavalrymen were killed, the black flame horses had already escaped, and he and little demon Tuoba couldn't stop them at all." After resting for a moment, Xian put away the black flame cavalry's equipment, and then gave 20 sets to little demon Tuoba. "These 20 sets are yours. You can go back to the divine central continent to sell them, or you can follow me to the imperial capital to sell them. It's up to you." To the imperial capital. This chapter isn't finished. Please continue. Little demon Tuoba practically didn't even think about it. Xian grinned. "Come, let's go to the imperial capital." As soon as he finished speaking, he called over his black flame horse. "Let's sit together." Little demon Tuoba didn't think too much about it, and she immediately leaped onto her black flame horse while Xian followed behind her. It didn't take long for the two of them to vanish into the distance. After Xian and little demon Tuoba left, Mu Qingxian appeared here once more, and his expression was surprisingly calm as he gazed at the corpses that covered the ground. A short moment later he turned around and left. On a plain, Xian led little demon Tuoba as they galloped madly on the black flame horse. On the back of the black flame horse, little demon Tuoba suddenly asked, "Sword cultivator, I forgot what your name is." "What's your name?" "Xian." "You're the sword master." "Yes." "Why are you so weak?" Xian was speechless. "Did I say something wrong?" "No. Actually, it's not that I'm weak, it's that you're too strong. In front of you, all geniuses and monstrous geniuses are trash. Swordsman, although you're a little weak, you're an honest person." "I like that." Xian was speechless. This time, Kuraki Academy and Dark World didn't send anyone to cause trouble, so their journey was very smooth and they were getting closer and closer to the imperial capital. Great Cloud Empire Imperial Palace. In a certain garden, a woman in a black dress was holding the hand of a little boy in a dragon robe as they slowly walked on the gravel Xiaodao. The little boy suddenly tilted his head and looked at the woman. "Sister, Grand Tutor said that I'm old. I should be in power." The woman stopped and looked at the little boy. "What do you think?" The little boy was silent. The woman smiled. "You still want it, right?" The little boy lowered his head even more. The woman gently rubbed the little boy's head. "It won't be long before the entire world will be yours. I won't fight with you for the throne." After saying that, she turned her head and looked not far away. There was a birdcage there, and inside the birdcage was a canary. Looking at the birdcage, the woman suddenly smiled. "Without this birdcage, that bird will obtain a wider sky." After saying that, she turned her head to the side. "Pass down the order. Grand Tutor's words and actions are improper. Beheaded. Li family colluded with outsiders to rebel. Beheaded. Gu family to rebel. Beheaded. Qing family to rebel. Beheaded. Tian family to rebel. Beheaded." She listed more than 20 aristocratic families in one breath, and all of them were the aristocratic families of Great Cloud Empire. The little boy was completely dumbfounded. "Yes." Someone answered in the dark and quietly retreated. The little boy looked at the woman with some astonishment, but the woman smiled. "Don't be surprised, they're all malignant tumors that should have been removed long ago. And there are still 2 of the biggest tumors, but they should be removed soon." After saying that, she let go of the little boy's hand and walked away. The little boy didn't follow her, he just lowered his head and no one knew what he was thinking. The woman slowly walked into the distance and stopped in front of a pool. Mu Qingxian was right in front of her. Mu Qingxian slightly bowed to the woman. "Miss Lian." The woman smiled. "Dean Mu failed." Mu Qingxuan's expression was gloomy. After a moment he slightly bowed. "Please help me, Miss Lian." "Help?" The woman shook her head and smiled. "For your Kuraki Academy, Great Cloud Empire has lost 150 Black Flame cavalrymen. Apart from that, we also mobilized the aristocratic families in the city to help. To be honest, I've helped you a lot, Dean Mu." Mu Qingxian looked at the woman with a trace of complicated expression. "Miss Lian, I'm not a fool. You seem to be helping Kuraki Academy, but in fact you're helping Great Cloud Empire, right? Out of the 50 Black Flame cavalrymen, 40 were killed, but Great Cloud Empire didn't take any responsibility. This chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page." Just this point alone made him understand a lot of things. Weaken. This woman was using Yi Xian to weaken their influence in Great Cloud Empire. Lian Wanli's smile gradually faded. Dean Mu, my Great Cloud Empire has lost 150 Black Flame cavalrymen for your Kuraki Academy. I'm really disappointed by your words. Mu Qingxuan's expression changed. After a moment he squeezed out a smile. Yes, I misspoke. I came here to ask for Miss Lian's help. As long as Miss Lian closes the city gate, dispatches the army to guard the surroundings, and activates the Grand Formation, Yi Xian won't be able to enter the city. Why? Lian Wanli suddenly walked to Mu Qingxian and looked straight at him. Yi Xian has become a sword master at such a young age. Such a talent is rare in Qingzhou. As people of Qingzhou we should be proud of him. Even if we can't be friends we shouldn't suppress him. Saying that she shook her head and sighed. Dean Mu, let me give you a piece of advice. Do more good. Saying that she turned and left. Mu Qingxuan's expression was as ugly as if he had eaten 10 kilograms of dung. Do more good. Have you ever done kindness for 10,000 li? Who doesn't know that you killed without batting an eye and slaughtered almost the entire Great Cloud Empire? Still doing good. Mu Qingxian almost vomited blood. He knew that Kuraki Academy, Dark World, and those aristocratic families had been cheated by this woman. What a huge scam. At this moment Lian Wanli suddenly stopped. She turned around and smiled. Dean Mu, a friendly reminder. Yi Xian will be here soon. Saying that she turned around and walked away while humming an unknown tune. Mu Qingxian coldly looked at Lian Wanli and didn't say anything else. He turned around and left. Because no matter what he said he would only be humiliating himself. Kuraki Academy. Mu Qingxian stood in front of Howren Palace. He raised his head and looked at the sword above his head for an hour. Sword Immortal. Mu Qingxian laughed at himself. A sword Immortal suppressed Kuraki Academy to the point of suffocation. At this moment he suddenly turned around. Behind him were all Kuraki Academy's students, mentors and elders. Everyone looked at Mu Qingxian. One of the students suddenly stood up. Dean Mu, if Yi Xian comes to my Kuraki Academy, I am willing to be the first to fight. I want the world to know that there are no cowards in my Kuraki Academy. We are willing to fight. Countless Kuraki Academy's students roared in unison. Mu Qingxuan's eyes had a trace of gratification. My Kuraki Academy students are ultimately unyielding. At this moment the mistress of the Dark World suddenly appeared beside Mu Qingxian. Yi Xian has arrived outside the city. He's here. The scene instantly quietened down. Outside the Great Cloud Imperial capital, Yi Xian and Little Demon Tuoba rode the Black Flame horse and slowly walked towards the city gate not far away. Little Demon, how did you become so outstanding? Can you teach me? I can't. I was born like this. So I also want to be as outstanding as you. Unfortunately, I'm afraid I won't be able to do it in this lifetime. Actually, you aren't that bad. You can see that I, Little Demon Tuoba, am outstanding at first glance. You are also very not simple. By the way, Little Demon, how about you call me Big Brother in the future? I will protect you. Whoever bullies you, I will help you beat them up. Oh no. Call me Big Sister, I will protect you in the future. Whoever bullies you, I will help you beat them up. Hey Big Sister. Little Demon Tuoba. P.S. I have been suffering from insomnia recently. I can only sleep by listening to songs. Especially one of the songs it is very good to listen to. It has been on repeat for a week. I sincerely recommend everyone to listen to it. The song name is very easy to remember. It is called Blue Phoenix Handsome Guy, recommended by Conscience. You all deserve it. End of this chapter. Chapter 195. Big Sister. Toba was stunned. Why did it look like a trap? At this moment Yi Xian said with a smile, I'll be honest with you. I came to the imperial capital to fight. With that he jumped off the Black Flame horse and looked up at Tuoba. It's nice to meet you. However, this is a matter between me, Kuraki Academy and Dark World. I shouldn't have let you get involved. Otherwise it would be too much. With that he turned and walked toward the city gate. A person naturally had to be righteous. A person without a bottom line was not a person. Swordsman. At this moment Tuoba's voice came from behind Yi Xian. Yi Xian stopped and turned to face Tuoba. Tuoba grinned. Although you are slippery, you are a good person. I, Tuoba, am willing to be friends with you. Yi Xian grinned. Yi Xian, Qingzhou's Jiang Country, Blue Waves Academy's dean. Tuoba's lips curled up. Tuoba, Divine Central Continent's Tuoba clan's #1 genius, ranked 9th on the monster list. In the future I will save the world. Yi Xian laughed. Little devil, if you want to save the world then you have to work hard. Little monster Tuoba nodded earnestly. I will. At this moment Yi Xian had reached the city gate. A middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of the gate. Dharma Realm. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian without saying anything. However, his aura grew weaker and weaker. Soon the middle-aged man was suppressed from Dharma Realm to Divine Combination Realm. The middle-aged man stopped near Yi Xian. Just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in front of the middle-aged man. At the same time, 12 golden men appeared around the middle-aged man. The 12 golden men attacked in unison. At the same time there was also a wisp of sword light. 3 breaths later, the 12 golden men retreated behind Yi Xian, and in front of Yi Xian, there was a head dripping with blood. It was the head of the middle-aged man. At this moment his eyes were wide open as though he had died with a grievance. At that moment he didn't even have the chance to make a move. It should be said that he was killed before he could even react. With 12 golden men and Yi Xian, there was no doubt that they could kill a Divine Combination Realm cultivator. Yi Xian looked up towards the city gate. Kuraki Academy, I'm coming. With that he quickly disappeared into the distance. Outside the city gates, little witch Tuoba glanced at the black flame horse beneath her, then hurriedly looked towards the nearby city gates. Swordsman, your horse. Yi Xian had entered the city. The news quickly spread throughout the capital of Great Cloud Imperial Capital. Soon, countless people gathered at the foot of Kuraki Academy's mountain. Kuraki Academy. This was an ancient force with 1,000 years of history in Azure Province. It was also one of the 3 super overlords in Azure Province. Before this, Kuraki Academy could make Azure Province tremble with a stomp of its foot. Although this sentence was somewhat exaggerated, it was enough to prove Kuraki Academy's influence in Azure Province. But now, a youth less than 20 years old had come to Great Cloud Imperial Capital. This wasn't the main point. The main point was that this youth had threatened to destroy Kuraki Academy. Destroy Kuraki Academy. Even Great Cloud Empire wouldn't dare to say such words. At this moment, countless people had gathered at the foot of Kuraki Academy's mountain. All of them came from all over the imperial capital. Everyone wanted to see how this youth from country of Jiang was going to destroy Kuraki Academy. Kuraki Academy was huge. At the foot of the mountain was a large square. At this moment, there were more than 100,000 people gathered at the square. There were all kinds of people. Wait. Everyone was waiting for Yi Xian to appear. On a certain street in the imperial capital, Yi Xian came to a noodle shop and sat down. Boss, give me 2 bowls of noodles and 2 eggs. The noodle shop owner answered, then skillfully grabbed a handful of noodles and threw them into the pot of soup. A moment later, 2 bowls of steaming hot noodles were placed in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian was stunned. 2 bowls? He was about to ask the noodle shop owner, but he seemed to have thought of something and swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Yi Xian was silent for a while. Then he said softly, I miss you. After saying that, he pushed one of the bowls of noodles to the opposite side and started eating. His sister. She was the most important person in his life. He would always remember one thing. Back then his sister was only 8 years old. She stood in front of a noodle stall for half an hour just to eat noodles. At that time he didn't have a single cent helplessness. Heartache. From that moment on he swore to himself that he would work hard to let his sister live a good life. The Divine Central Continent. On a certain street, a little girl and a beautiful woman were strolling slowly. Passers-by on both sides of the street were looking at them. The little girl was too special. The little girl was about 13 or 14 years old. She wore a dress that seemed to be made of ice. Not only her dress but even her hair was like ice strips. Her entire body exuded a cold aura that could be felt even from 30 meters away. Apart from that, every time the little girl's feet touched the ground it would freeze. Who is this little girl? She's so strange. You don't even know her? The Northern Chill Holy Girl is said to be 12th on the monster list. That was 5 days ago. She's now 8th on the monster list. Heavens! How old is she? The youngest monster of the divine central continent. At the end of the street, the little girl suddenly stopped and turned to look at a noodle shop nearby. The little girl walked into the noodle shop and sat down on a chair. As soon as she sat down, the chair instantly froze over. Everyone around looked at the little girl and the beautiful woman. The little girl said indifferently, 2 bowls of noodles and 2 eggs. The owner was still in a daze. The beautiful woman by the little girl's side glanced coldly at the owner. The latter shivered and hurriedly said, "Yes, yes, I'll be right there." The little girl withdrew a ring carved from ice and pressed it lightly with her thumb. The ring shook slightly, and it didn't take long for 5 swords to appear on the table. Everyone in the surroundings was dumbstruck when they saw these 5 swords. True rank swords. 5 true rank swords. The little girl gazed at the 5 true rank swords for a short while, and then she turned to look at the beautiful woman by her side. "I must obtain that heaven rank sword." The beautiful woman hesitated for a moment and said, "Holy maiden, you're not a swordsman, so why do you like to collect swords?" The little girl said softly, "Because my older brother is a swordsman. These swords must be given to him." The beautiful woman glanced at the little girl but didn't say anything. The little girl put the swords away and asked, "Is my older brother doing well in Pine Prefecture?" The beautiful woman nodded. "Very well." The little girl nodded slightly, and then she seemed to have thought of something and said coldly, "Is Kuraki Academy still bullying him?" The beautiful woman shook her head. "I don't think so. In short, he's doing well. If anything happens, I'll report it to Holy Maiden." Now Holy Maiden's top priority is to subdue the divine artifact within your body, attain the myriad Dharma realm, and charge into the top 5 of the monstrous genius rankings. The little girl nodded. "I'll work hard. I'll protect my older brother well in the future." The beautiful woman glanced at the little girl and didn't say anything. Meanwhile, a waiter brought over 2 bowls of noodles, and after he placed them on the table, the waiter hurriedly ran away because it was truly too cold. On the other hand, the 2 hot bowls of noodles on the table had instantly frozen. After looking at the 2 bowls of noodles for a very long time, the little girl suddenly said softly, "Brother, I miss you." She would never forget something. One night all those years ago her older brother had returned with a bowl of steaming noodles, and there was even an egg in the noodles. She was overjoyed at the time. Because she'd never eaten noodles before and she really wanted to eat a bowl of noodles. She asked her older brother to eat with her and her older brother said he was full. She believed him. That night her older brother sat in the corner and watched her eat, and every time she looked at her older brother would grin. That year her older brother was 12 years old. Her mother had just left. To this day she still didn't know how her older brother got that bowl of noodles. Every time she asked, her older brother would just grin. Qingzhou, Great Cloud Imperial Capital. Yixian's noodles were almost finished. At this time a woman suddenly sat opposite Yixian. Yixian stopped and faced the woman in front of him. The woman was wearing a black tight-fitting dress. On the dress was a black phoenix spreading its wings in the sky. The woman smiled and said, "You don't mind, right?" Yixian shook his head and continued to lower his head to eat the noodles. The woman ate a mouthful of noodles then looked at Yixian. "Let me introduce myself. My name is Lian Wanli. I changed my name myself. Does it sound nice?" King Kaosheng. Yixian stopped. He had naturally heard of this name. The name of Great Cloud Empire's King Kaosheng, who didn't know of Great Cloud Realm. The woman took a sip of the soup and shook her head. "It's a bit bland." "What's the matter?" Yixian asked. The woman smiled and said, "Nothing, I just came to see you." After saying that, she stood up and looked at Yixian. "Your strength is passable and you're also quite handsome. How about this, follow me? This king will take you flying." Yixian put down his chopsticks. "A straightforward person doesn't beat around the bush. Do you like me?" Lian Wanli was stunned. Yixian said, "Sorry, I already have someone I like." Lian Wanli said seriously, "My palace's imperial doctor is not bad. Do you want to go see him?" Yixian. Lian Wanli walked to Yixian's side. She gently patted Yixian's shoulder. Now follow this king back to the palace. Let the imperial doctor take a look at you, maybe you can still be saved. After saying that, she walked away. In front of the noodle stall, Xian was silent for a moment, then began to eat the noodles. Soon Xian left. Half an hour later, Xian arrived at Kuraki College. At this moment, Kuraki College was already filled with people. The surrounding roads were blocked so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Xian was speechless. These people are all here to watch the show? Excuse me. Xian squeezed forward. Excuse me, excuse me. At this moment, the man in front of Xian suddenly turned around and glared at Xian. What are you squeezing for? You don't want to live anymore? Xian cupped his fists. Excuse me, I have something to do. The man said angrily. Something? Am I fine? Do you know that today is the day my brother-in-law comes to challenge Kuraki College? Xian was stunned, then asked, Your brother-in-law is? The man snorted coldly. Xian. Have you heard of him? Let me tell you, he is my brother-in-law. My sister is already pregnant with his child for 8 months. Xian. Chapter 196. Months. Xian's face was full of black lines. What the hell was this? Becoming a father? More and more people were crowding around and there was no space left. In the crowd, Xian felt helpless. He had wanted to keep a low profile, but he had no choice but to leap into the air. In the air, he pointed with his fingers and a sword landed firmly under his feet. Just like that, he slowly rode the sword into the distance. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Xian. In the air, Xian stood on the sword with his hands behind his back. He looked calm and his hair fluttered in the wind, looking very elegant. He is Xian. In the field, someone suddenly shouted. Xian. In an instant, the crowd was in an uproar. Xian. The youngest sword master of Qingzhou, and could be said to be the most monstrous person in Qingzhou. The elegance of a swordsman. Many people came here not only to watch the show, but also to see the elegance of a swordsman. After all, there were not many powerful swordsmen in Qingzhou. In the crowd, a man looked at Xian in the air with a dumbfounded expression. Brother-in-law. In the air, Xian's speed on the sword was very slow. It was not that he wanted to be slow, but he could not go fast at all. He had not mastered the sword flight technique at all. His current state could not be considered sword flight at all. But others did not think so. In their eyes, he was slowly flying on the sword. Soon, under the crowd's gaze, Xian came to a huge rock at the foot of Kuraki Academy's mountain. He pointed with his right hand, and the sword under his feet turned into a sword light and flew in front of him in a very elegant posture. This move immediately caused the crowd to boil. Too handsome. On the huge rock, Xian turned around and pointed the sword in his hand to the ground. He looked up at Kuraki Academy's mountain. Kuraki Academy, does anyone dare to fight? Does anyone dare to challenge me? The crowd quieted down and countless people raised their heads to look at Kuraki Academy. How would this superpower of Qingzhou respond? They didn't have to wait too long. Soon, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared not far away from Xian. Mu Qingxian, the dean of Kuraki Academy. Mu Qingxian looked at Xian and was about to speak when Xian suddenly pointed his sword at Mu Qingxian. Don't talk nonsense. I'm here to kill, not to listen to your nonsense. With that, he raised his sword and rushed towards Kuraki Academy's mountain. Below, countless people were stunned. How could he be so tough? Mu Qingxuan's face was extremely gloomy. Since the establishment of Kuraki Academy, no one had ever treated them like this. Mu Qingxian suddenly turned around and roared, Xian. As his voice fell, his aura grew weaker and weaker. In an instant, it had fallen to the divine combination realm, suppressing one's realm. Everyone in the surroundings was dumbstruck. This Mu Qingxian was going to take the field personally. In the distance, Xian stopped. He hadn't expected that Mu Qingxian would actually take the field himself. If Mu Qingxian were to forcefully suppress his realm here, then it would mean that it would truly be a battle of life and death. Because Mu Qingxian would absolutely not dare to return to the Dharma realm if he couldn't win. If Mu Qingxian did that, then the reputation of Kuraki Academy that had existed for 1,000 years would be instantly destroyed. Mu Qingxian stared fixedly at Xian. Don't you want to fight? I'll fight you. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished. A sharp and ear-piercing sound of something tearing resounded, and then a fist shot straight at Yi Xian's face. The fist contained a peerlessly overbearing and ferocious force that seemed capable of destroying everything. Yi Xian didn't greet this fist head-on. He dodged to the side and avoided it. At the same time he twisted his wrist, and the spirit elegance sword in his hand slashed horizontally towards Mu Qingxuan's abdomen. Unfortunately, the sword hadn't even reached Mu Qingxuan's abdomen when a hand grabbed it. Mu Qingxuan's left hand. His 5 fingers gripped Yi Xian's sword tightly. Yi Xian's sword seemed to be welded and it couldn't move at all. In the blink of an eye, Mu Qingxuan's left hand slid forward. His fist slammed into Yi Xian's abdomen. Bang! Yi Xian instantly retreated 200 feet. The surroundings quietened down. After repelling Yi Xian with a single strike, Mu Qingxian didn't attack again. He lowered his head and looked at his arm. There was a shallow sword mark there. At the last moment when he sent Yi Xian flying with his fist, Yi Xian's sword had also slashed across his arm. It could be said that he only had a slight advantage in this confrontation. Mu Qingxian raised his head and looked at Yi Xian, who was not far away, with a solemn expression in his eyes. The exchange just now had allowed him to understand one thing, and that was that no one in the younger generation of Karaki Academy could contend against Yi Xian. It should be said that there were very few people in the younger generation of Qingzhou who could contend against Yi Xian. In the distance, Yi Xian rubbed his abdomen. At this moment he was somewhat astonished, because at the critical moment just now he had used the kindness sword intent to protect the crucial part of his abdomen. Originally he had merely wanted to counteract Mu Qingxuan's power, but he discovered that if he gathered the kindness sword intent in one place, it was actually equivalent to a piece of armor, and this armor was even more useful than his armor of the earth. Mu Qingxuan's punch just now hadn't injured him at all, and he had only been shaken for a moment. This discovery made Yi Xian extremely pleasantly surprised. So the kindness sword intent could be used in this way. Or perhaps it should be said that the kindness sword intent was actually a way of defense, because he discovered that the kindness sword intent's lethality wasn't that great. On the contrary, it was very useful in the aspect of defense. Quickly fight! Someone suddenly shouted from the crowd below. Everyone was speechless. Mu Qingxian glanced at Yi Xian. Come, let me see how monstrous you are. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly flew to a boulder that was dozens of feet tall beside him. He abruptly kicked the boulder, and the boulder instantly flew out and smashed towards Yi Xian, who was not far away. Yi Xian's face was expressionless as he took a swift step forward and stabbed with his sword. It was a simple and direct strike. The boulder was instantly split into 2. But Yi Xian's sword was forcefully stopped because 2 fingers had clamped down on the tip of his sword. After clamping down on Yi Xian's sword, Mu Qingxian was about to attack when a flying sword suddenly slashed out from within Yi Xian's body. Mu Qingxuan's pupils constricted slightly, and he put his right hand together and flicked. Bang! The flying sword was slashed away, but another flying sword slashed over. Mu Qingxian tapped the tip of his foot lightly, and his entire body floated backward. However, the flying sword was still in front of him, and it was only a few inches away from his forehead. At this moment he could clearly feel the sword light emitted by Yi Xian's flying sword. It was sharp and piercing. Mu Qingxian suddenly tilted his head and dodged the flying sword by a hair's breadth. However, another flying sword appeared in front of him. Mu Qingxian instantly retreated a few meters, but he quickly sprinted forward and punched out. Bang! He punched out, and the powerful force emitted from his fist forcibly blocked the 7 flying swords in front of him. However, it was unable to repel the 7 flying swords. At this moment, Yi Xian, who was riding his sword in the distance, suddenly rushed toward Mu Qingxian like a gust of wind. He held the spirit elegant sword, and within the sword, a wave of sword force was increasing at a terrifying speed. Gathering force. When Yi Xian was only a few meters away from Mu Qingxian, the sword force contained within the spirit elegant sword in Yi Xian's hand had far exceeded the force that a divine combination realm expert should have. Mu Qingxuan's expression became even more serious when he saw this scene. It should be said that it had changed from serious to fearful. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly leaped up. In the next moment he held the sword with both hands and slashed down from above Mu Qingxuan's head. One sword to decide life and death. The moment Yi Xian's sword slashed down, the sword force instantly increased by several times. At this moment, the force contained within this sword was already approaching the myriad Dharma realm. Yi Xian hadn't reached the myriad Dharma realm, but this sword was approaching the myriad Dharma realm. Below, a trace of savagery flashed in Mu Qingshuan's eyes. His right foot swept backwards and he put his palms together. In an instant the aura around his body surged. However, it hadn't recovered to the myriad Dharma realm. He was executing a powerful martial technique. When Yi Xian's sword was about 10 inches away from Mu Qingshuan's head, Mu Qingshuan suddenly stomped on the ground with his right foot. He put his palms together and pushed upwards. Void obliteration. As soon as he said this, the top of Mu Qingshuan's head turned pitch black, and the sword light emitted by Yi Xian's sword disappeared without a trace. Not only that, but the pitch-black darkness was also spreading towards Yi Xian at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, Yi Xian had been devoured. The surroundings quietened down. Everyone looked into the distance. Yi Xian died just like that. One breath later. Boom. A terrifying white stream of air suddenly erupted from the pitch-black darkness. Kindness sword intent. This kindness sword intent actually began to devour the pitch-black darkness. At the same time, a sword light slashed down from the white stream of air. Bang! Under the gazes of countless people, Mu Qingshuan was instantly blasted hundreds of feet away. Only when he crashed into a mountain wall did he stop. The mountain wall behind him violently trembled and directly cracked. Everyone turned their heads to the right. The pitch-black space had returned to normal. There stood a man holding a long sword. The man's body emitted a white mist. Materialized sword intent. Yi Xian. Numerous people looked at each other in disdain. Did Yi Xian win? Yi Xian carried his sword and walked towards Mu Qingshuan in the distance. At this moment, blood constantly flowed from the corner of Mu Qingshuan's mouth. There were more than a dozen sword wounds on his body. Each of them was extremely deep and injured his insides. Seriously injured. Mu Qingshuan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stared at Yi Xian. What an overbearing sword technique. What a strong sword intent. Materialized sword intent. What kind of sword intent is this? Yi Xian stopped several feet away from Mu Qingshuan. He pointed his sword at Mu Qingshuan. Restore the 10,000 Dharma realm. Restore the 10,000 Dharma realm. Everyone was stunned. What did Yi Xian want to do? Was he courting death? It must be known that Yi Xian was only at the ethereal opening realm. Mu Qingshuan stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said again, "Don't worry. The world will not say that your Kuraki Academy is bullying the weak, nor will they say that you are greedy for life and afraid of death. They will not say that your Kuraki Academy is shameless. It should not affect your Kuraki Academy's 1,000-year reputation. Come, don't have any worries. Quickly restore to the 10,000 Dharma realm." Everyone, P.S. I borrowed a wireless update from the roadside. I ran 3 streets before I found a wireless update that didn't require a password. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.